The city trembled beneath a sky the color of molten brass. Daenerys Targaryen rode high on Drogon's back above King's Landing, her silver-gold braids whipping across her cheeks like banners in a storm. 10 years of exile and war had led her here. Every death, every triumph, every betrayal had sharpened into the single crystalline moment that hovered before her now. The dragon's massive wings beat a thunderous rhythm that rattled roof tiles loose, scattering them in hissing cascades to the streets below. From distant plazas and crooked alleyways, the bells told their surrender in ragged, uneven peals, but their thin metallic clangor could not breach the thrum of blood rushing in Daenerys' ears. She saw the Red Keep rearing on Aegon's Hill, its skeletal towers pricking the harsh afternoon light like spears of rusted garnet. That fortress was hers by right, by birth, by fire, by every coin of blood fate had forced her to pay. She inhaled brackish wind laced with smoke and char, the sense of a city at the brink of ruin, and felt the weft and weave of destiny tightening around her like a silken noose. With a silent command, she pressed her knees into Drogon's obsidian-scaled flank. The dragon answered by dipping a shoulder, angling toward the crooked lantern of Flea Bottom where fires already chewed through thatch and timber. One good blast would turn those flames into a riptide, scouring every cobbled artery of the capital. Daenerys leaned forward, eyes bright with unshed tears of fury and triumph. "Dracarys," she whispered, only once, but the word carried centuries of conquest in its marrow. Drogon's massive chest expanded. Heat shimmered around the ridged plates of his throat. But instead of roaring white-hot devastation, the dragon faltered. His jaws parted, and Daenerys felt the hot gust of breath that should have ignited into a jet of annihilation. Yet no fire came. Drogon's pupils, ember-red slits that had terrified armies, swiveled to fix on her, unblinking. A tremor passed through the ridged spine beneath her saddle-leather yoke. Daenerys blinked, certain for a heartbeat that she had not spoken, but she tasted smoke clinging to the back of her tongue. She repeated the command, louder this time, lashing the words like a whip. "Dracarys!" Her voice cracked on the final syllable. Still, Drogon refused. His wings flared, arresting their descent, and he hung above the rooftops, beating the air with a ponderous thud-thud that scattered billowing patches of ash. Below, small folk stared upward, their faces masks of soot and terror. Mothers clutched children, expecting death to rain from the sky at any heartbeat. Soldiers of the Golden Company, already shattered by gray worms' unsullied phalanx, stumbled amid rubble, their bright lion banners trampled into mud and blood. The city was Daenerys for the taking, yet it remained inexplicably alive, suspended at the edge of catastrophe, only because one great beast denied its queen. Viserys' voice, long dead yet never truly silent, hissed through her skull. "They love to smell their own burning. Remember that. You are the last dragon." The words curdled against this sudden, impossible disobedience. Beneath Daenerys, Drogon released a chuffing growl. Not hostile, not angry, but questioning. She felt his confusion as if it were her own. In Meereen, he had defied her once, a youthful show of willfulness born of hunger and confinement. But this cut deeper, an instinctual rebellion against the path she had carved. On the shattered battlements of the city wall, Jon Snow watched, white dust ghosting his hair and black leather. He had cleaved his way through Lannister spearmen to reach the courtyard, driven by horror as he felt the city tipping into madness. He had expected to see Drogon descend like a falling star of doom. Instead, the dragon hovered, wavering. The bell's doleful croak faltered, and for a long heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, silence claimed the battlefield. Jon's gloved hand closed over the pommel of his sword. He did not know whether to pray or seize the moment. Nearby, Davos Seaworth stared upward, squinting through smoke. "7, save us," the Onion Knight muttered, half-belief. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister stood at a fractured window, Qyburn trembling behind her like a leaf on the verge of snapping free. She had braced herself for a gout of dragon flame that would melt the tower's stone around her. When fire failed to appear, Her emerald eyes widened. What is she waiting for? She whispered, more to herself than to her maester. The high sept's cracked dome reflected a sliver of sun that speared into Drogon's facet-scaled snout. He turned away, his great wings tilting. In that motion lay a message Daenerys could not misinterpret. He would not burn them. You do not question me, she murmured, her voice raw. You are my child. Beneath her palm, the dragon's scales radiated living heat, yet the warmth that had once thrilled her with belonging now seared with betrayal. Daenerys glimpsed the memory of Rhaegal's corpse tumbling into the sea, skewered by scorpion bolts, of Missandei's broken body falling before the ramparts of Dragonstone. Rage rekindled, but Drogon felt it, recoiling. A low, mournful rumble echoed from deep in his belly, thick with pain and refusal. Another gust of wind rocked them. Daenerys realized Drogon was ascending, not descending. He lifted them higher, drifting above the outer Baelor's sept where a dense cloud of white ravens spiraled in panic. The queen's fingers tightened on the saddle hooks. Land, she commanded, voice trembling. Land and burn them. Instead, Drogon wheeled west, carrying her away from the city's heart. Each wing beat hammered the truth deeper, that he had made a choice. The mother could not turn the child into a weapon, not this time. Below, Jon watched the black silhouette glide away. Understanding lit behind his gray eyes. He sheathed his sword, heart pounding not with dread but with spark-bright hope. The queen's dragon had stayed its fury. Perhaps the city could be spared. He sprinted for the inner gate, barking orders for the northern men to hold. Their faces were streaked with blood and confusion. Some cheered, others stood helpless, waiting for orders that never came. Grey Worm, halfway through plunging his spear into a kneeling Lannister, paused when he realized the sky above had ceased to rain fire. His face, etched with warlike resolve, flickered with uncertainty. The Unsullied around him shifted their shields, awaiting the queen's fury that had always guided them. But fury was retreating, borne on black wings. Up in the clouds, Daenerys fought for control. Every bond she shared with Drogon vibrated like a cracked bowstring. She had ridden other dragons in lost memories, visions from her family's lore, but with Drogon, there had never been distance. He was her rage, and her mercy blended in living flame. That bond now resisted her. She choked on betrayal, unable to reconcile how her will, forged in suffering, could be denied by the creature she loved most. She pictured Astapor's slavers dissolving in fire, Myreen's masters shrieking beneath collapsing pyramids. Those moments had felt righteous, a crucible forging justice from blood. Was this city so different? They had cheered the Child Queen's father when he scorched Rickard Stark. They had spat at Ned Stark's rotting head. They had cheered Joffrey. They deserved fire. Yet Drogon's heart thudded with something else. An ancient instinct older than Targaryen conquest, echoing of Valyria's doom, where dragons perished in molten tears of the earth. Through the tether of blood and magic between them, Daenerys sensed raw alarm. A prophecy glimpsed only by beasts that once soared over volcanoes. Fire unrestrained would devour even its master. "Take me back," she hissed. "We finish this. They will fear me, or they will die." But Drogon's only answer was altitude, clouds swallowing them whole. The chill struck her cheeks, turning sweat to frost. The dragon banked northward, toward the vast dark of Blackwater Bay where ships burned at anchor, their crews flailing in oily waves. He skimmed low above acrid smoke, scattering cinders across his wing membrane. Plumes of tar-black columns spiraled skyward like accusing fingers. Along the shore, Arya Stark dragged herself from a pile of broken masonry. The white horse she would have ridden into legend was gone, spooked by falling embers. She coughed, spitting soot, and looked up to see Drogon vanish into mist like a myth. She clenched her jaw. Somewhere, Daenerys still lived, but the city was not yet doomed. The hound's gravel-rasp voice echoed in memory. "You want to be like me? Get on with it." She limped into the ruins, blade drawn, eyes set on the Red Keep. Inside that keep, Tyrion Lannister walked arm in arm with despair. He had slipped past unsullied sentries to the dungeons, praying to find Jaime and Cersei's escape passage intact. Instead, falling rubble blocked every turn. Ash and dust coated his hair like early frost. When the tremors ceased, he expected heat to claim him next. But a cold silence reigned. The dragon's fire had not come. The bells, silent now, rang only inside his skull. He staggered to a breach overlooking the city. He saw random fires licking broken markets, smoke trails looping upward like scar tissue. Yet the conflagration he had dreaded, Dothraki riders galloping through columns of flame, Drogon scourging block after block, had not erupted. He clutched the stone casement, confusion battling relief. Had he been wrong about the queen after all? Beyond the bay, Drogon elite on a crescent of black pebbled shore where dragon glass sometimes washed up like sea-wept obsidian shards. He folded his wings with a sigh that shuddered through the armor of his ribs. Daenerys dismounted, boots crunching on damp stones. Wind tore at her cloak. The first drops of a sudden storm peppered the ground. She turned, expecting Drogon to lower his head for the soothing croon she always gentled him with. Instead, he remained poised, watchful, like a sentinel between her and the city. In his eyes, twin ember pits, she saw no defiance, only sorrow. The queen realized then that the bond between them could not be commanded solely by words of fire. It mirrored her own heart, and hers had split along a fault line carved by grief. Since losing Rhaegal, Viserion, Jorah, Missandei, her heart had grown a carapace of rage, yet at its core nestled the lonely girl who once wandered the red waste with bones visible beneath pale skin. That girl had pitied slaves and coward children. Drogon felt her still, and could not torch what she once vowed to protect. Rain grew harder. Water hissed against Drogon's scales. Daenerys stalked the shoreline, her breath ragged. "You think you know better than me," she cried, tears mixing with rain. The dragon's nostrils flared with a low rumble, more of grief than fury. She knelt, fists in the pebbles. Every memory of betrayal, the shattered trust in Jorah, when he confessed his spine, the knives in Korth, the masked sons in Meereen, rose to choke her. She had burned them all, because fear was the only leash men obeyed. But Drogon was no man. He obeyed love. And love had faltered within her. Footsteps crunched behind her. She whirled, hand at the hilt of a dagger. Jon Snow approached, cloak soaked, hair plastered against his brow. Ghost padded silent by his side. How he had crossed the distance so swiftly, she could not fathom, but his presence carved the tempest around them into something still. "Daenerys," he said, voice hoarse. The bells rang. "You stopped." She rose, trembling, blade glinting. "I did not stop, Jon. Drogon stopped me." Jon's gaze flicked to the great beast, then back. "You trained him, raised him. He knows your heart. My heart is fire and blood." She snapped. "It is mercy as well." She laughed, a raw, jagged sound. "Mercy? I brought mercy to Astapor on Dragonfire. I freed slaves with flame." Jon stepped closer. "You freed them by breaking chains, not by burning children." Daenerys' eyes glistened. "And what of the children crucified by Meereen's masters? The sons forced to watch fathers flayed by Dothraki Khalasars? I saved them. I will save these people from tyrants who would rule after Cersei. They must fear me." He shook his head, shadowed by waves and rain. "Fear is not justice. Drogon knows that. Look at him." She did. Drogon bowed his head, enormous neck curving until his chin brushed the stones. In that posture he looked almost small, apologetic, as though begging her to choose the path she once promised to walk. Jon's voice softened. "End this now. Take the city's surrender. Rule, if you must, but rule with the mercy that made men follow you across the world." Images flickered in her mind, unsullied chanting her titles in Astapor, freedmen painting her sigil on broken chains, children offering flowers in Meereen streets. Those children had gazed upon her with pure adoration, not terror. She had bathed in their awe like sunlight. Somewhere along the march to Westeros, that warmth had chilled into something harsher. She looked south toward King's Landing. Only distant pyres scarred the afternoon gloom. No tidal wave of dragonfire illuminated the horizon. The city still stood, albeit wounded. "Let us return," she whispered. Jon bowed his head in gratitude. Together, they mounted Drogon. Daenerys first, then Jon behind her, his arms around her waist solely for balance. Drogon launched skyward. This flight felt different, lighter, unburdened by wrath. The dragon crossed the bay and circled low above the Red Keep. Soldiers on both sides stared upward, bracing for doom. Instead, Drogon landed atop the broken remnants of Maegor's holdfast. Stone groaned beneath his weight. Daenerys descended alone, cloak snapping like a banner in wind. Jon followed but stayed a few paces back. In the shattered throne room, where shards of stained glass glittered like frozen rainbows on the floor, Cersei awaited, flanked by what remained of the Queen's Guard. Their white cloaks were smeared with ash. Blood trickled from a cut across her cheekbone. Daenerys strode forward, each step echoing. "Your city has yielded," she declared. "Lay down your crown." Cersei's lip curled, but defeat hollowed her eyes. She slipped the gold circle from her head. It clattered to the flagstones, a dull, anticlimactic sound. Qyburn stooped to retrieve it, but Daenerys halted him with a gesture. "I came to break chains, not bodies." She said loud enough that her voice carried through shattered walls to courtyards below. "Any who lay down arms are spared." Grey Worm emerged, spear dripping with rainwater and blood. The threat of mutiny flickered in his eyes. War had claimed Missandei, and vengeance burned within him. But he knelt, spear reversed, offering the point to her, acknowledging her choice. Around him, Unsullied knelt as one. Tyrion limped into view, tears slicking tracks through grime on his cheeks, as he beheld the scorched yet unruined city beyond. For the first time since the dragonflies of the Blackwater, hope blossomed in his heart. Branched corridors of possibility unfolded, of healing, of rebuilding, of a queen who had chosen mercy at the final breath. Had Drogon not intervened, that hope would lie in ashes. Cersei knelt too at last. Silence enveloped the hall as rain drummed through broken roof beams. In that hush, Daenerys felt the impossible weight of choices made by monsters and men alike. The Iron Throne itself, a twisted sculpture of blades, lay half-buried beneath fallen masonry. She stared at it, and saw not a symbol of power, but a tomb of those who had murdered, perished, and betrayed for its sake. She turned away. "Let it remain shattered," she said quietly. "Westeros needs no throne of swords to bleed upon." Jon exhaled a breath he did not know he held. Drogon, outside, issued a trumpet that rolled across the city like distant thunder. No flames followed. Instead, the dragon folded his wings and curled around the courtyard, guarding rather than destroying. In the months that followed, King's Landing became a place of scaffolds and gardens rather than pyres. Daenerys convened councils of Northmen and Dornish, Ironborn and Reach lords, freedmen and septons. She named Tyrion Hand once more, pardoned Davos for his crimes, appointed Arya as emissary to the free cities. Grey Worm sailed to Nath to honor Missandei's memory, leading Unsullied as protectors rather than conquerors. But the greatest change came invisibly, whispered on winds high above the Blackwater. The knowledge that dragons too could choose mercy. They were not mere weapons but guardians of the balance between flame and life. Drogon's refusal reforged the tale of Daenerys Stormborn from conqueror into steward. From breaker of chains by fire to healer of wounds by will. Years later, children would chase one another in rebuilt markets, shrieking and laughing as Drogon's shadow swept across cobbles, but never scorched them. They would grow to tell their own children of the day the dragon saved King's Landing from his own queen's wrath, reminding all who heard that even the fiercest of hearts could bend toward mercy, and that true power lay not in making the world fear fire, but in teaching it to grow after the flames had passed. Rain softened into a silver veil across the battered towers of King's Landing as scaffolds climbed the ruins like ivy, and the smell of whetstone replaced the harsher stench of ash. The capital's heart beat slow, but steady, stitched together by hammers, and the hum of voices, arguing over timber quotas and grain tithes, instead of screams. Daenerys walked the length of the half-rebuilt throne room at dawn, boots echoing on new flagstones whose palest veins still gleamed with fresh polish. A cold draft poured through the empty space where windows of colored glass once told the Targaryen conquest in shards of ruby and sapphire. Those stories lay broken on the courtyard below, swept into barrels to be melted for lantern panes. She paused where twisted blades jutted from stone like fossilized thorns, the remnants of the Iron Throne she had refused to mend. They reminded her now of a carcass picked clean by carrion birds, a warning etched in rust. Behind her, Tyrion cleared his throat with deliberate softness, the sound carrying more weight than a clarion. "Our envoys from the north arrived late in the night," he said, voice hushed by old ghosts. "Sansa Stark heads their delegation in person. She brings Maester Samwell and Gilly's babe, 3 months old and loud as any drummer boy." Daenerys' fingers brushed a jag of blackened steel. "Sam travels well for a new father. Duty weighs heavier than a babe, it seems." Tyrion straightened the crimson and black sash across his tunic. "Lady Sansa requests audience at midday." A quieter set of footsteps approached. Jon Snow, freshly dismounted from a dawn patrol along the city wall. The cuirassiers he commanded had been christened the Queen's Shield, and their cloaks, white trimmed in gray, paled his own black leathers to shadows. He smelled of rain and horse sweat, a scent Daenerys had come to trust more than scented parchment or perfumed oaths. He sank to one knee before speaking, for ceremony's sake, then rose before she could ask him. "The northern escort rode hard," he said. "They're quartered outside the Gate of the Gods, tents neat as drill yards. No banners save the direwolf." She studied him. "I did not expect Sansa herself. She means to protect northern interests with her own tongue." Jon answered, then added, "Softer. She trusts mine no longer." The ache in that admission trembled through the air between them, but politics gave no space to soothe it. Daenerys inhaled. "Very well. Summon the small council in 1 hour. We will greet my Lady of Winterfell with open doors and open ledgers." 1 hour stretched into 2 while hands and maids fretted over placement of rushes and flower garlands, salvaged from hillside orchards, left unburned by the war. By the time the council assembled, dawn's pewter light had brightened to the color of tarnished pewter. Davos Seaworth stood by a freshly repaired window bay, reading the harbor with a sailor's squint. Beside him, Yara Greyjoy lounged against a carved pillar, hair cropped shorter than a sellsword's and salt, still crusting the seams of her jerkin. Gendry Baratheon, newly forged Lord of Storms, and yet happier, carrying a smith's hammer than a lord's quill, rubbed ink from his knuckles as though it were soot. Brienne of Tarth kept her post at the Queen's right, eyes the same pale blue as distant ice floes. She had accepted command of the Queen's Guard only after Jaime Lannister's body was found beneath the rubble clutching Cersei's hand. The twin swords Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail hung behind the council dais in silent testament, vows broken and remade. When Sansa at last arrived, silence folded over the hall as surely as a velvet drape. She wore northern gray trimmed in white fox, far too warm for the capital's damp heat, her red hair pinned beneath a fur hood dusted by rain. Behind her marched Maester Samwell in citadel gray, and behind him Podrick Payne with 2 other Northmen, whose mail shirts bore fresh hammer marks from city smithies. Sansa's mouth tightened upon seeing Tyrion, her husband in name still, by law made by tyrants and unmade by mutual escape. Before the throne's broken blades, she stopped. Her curtsy to Daenerys was shallow, but not insolent. "Your Grace, I thank you for your welcome." Her words drifted, clipped by the distance from where the dais once rose. Daenerys inclined her head. "Lady Stark, the realm owes the North a great debt. You endured the longest night and still sent swords south to end a cruel game of queens. Nandero. Cruelty's end remains unproved," Sansa returned. Her blue eyes flicked toward broken iron. A seat may shatter, but power has a way of finding new thrones. Tyrion's brows knit, but Daenerys lifted a hand forestalling rebuttal. Then let us build those thrones together, from wood that bends without killing anyone who sits. Sansa's shoulders loosened by a finger breath. She gestured, and Samwell stepped forward with a leather folio. Maester Sam bears proposals from Winterfell's lords, as well as a tentative charter drafted during the King's Council at Wintertown. Jon's brow furrowed. King's Council. My brother Bran is king in the north, Sansa said. Not by rebellion but by acclamation of the clans and houses who bled on the ice. He rules so we may speak here as equals, not supplicants. Silence again, thicker this time. Broken only by the pattering leak above the window, where half a gargoyle's snout still funneled rain through a crack. Davos cleared his throat. The Queen has offered the North a voice at this table, m'lady, equal enough for my liking. Voices may speak, Sansa said, but chains still bind unless they are shattered entire. Her gaze settled on Daenerys. If the North is to be one kingdom among several, let every realm choose its own laws, levy its own taxes, and pledge peace rather than fealty. Yara pushed off her pillar. Sounds like what the Iron Islands have begged for since before your father was mad. And Dorne fought for as much 2 centuries, added Illyria Sand's eldest daughter, now Princess Maria Martell, who represented Sunspear since her mother's confinement in Casterly Rock prison and eventual escape. She wore a sunrise shawl despite the gray day. Tyrion exhaled through pursed lips. The 7 kingdoms, fracturing into 7 crowns, will invite 7 wars as soon as coffers grow hungry. Unless... Samwell interjected, voice steady yet earnest. Those crowns form a confederation. Each keeps its culture and coin, but matters of realm-wide defense, roads, ravens, and the citadel remain joint held. He opened the folio. Neat script covered a single sheet, sealed with the stark direwolf pressed in plain beeswax. Representatives chosen by both lords and commons would gather once each year. No ruler may declare war without consent of 2/3, the Confederation. Gendry raised a brow. What if pirates sack Gulltown in spring and the vote gathers in autumn? A delay of months can drown a coast. Then? Sansa answered before Samwell could. In dire need, a realm may defend itself, but must present proof of aggression within 30 days or answer for breach of peace. Daenerys paced, cloak brushing stone. To her, the words sounded like chains of parchment, delicate, too easily burned. Yet the fire in her veins, once swift to rage, now whispered caution after Drogon's refusal. She could scourge her war council with flame and force them to kneel, or she could bend like a reed and survive the next storm. Brienne's voice, low and calm, slipped through the tension. I once swore to defend the innocent. These words offer that defense in ink rather than steel. Paper is lighter to carry than graves. That simple statement cracked the hush. Debate erupted. Davos citing coin flows through the narrow sea. Yara demanding Salt Fleet exemptions. Tyrion warning of the reached grain if newly crowned lords withheld autumn harvests. Over the din, Daenerys' focus drifted to Jon gazing at Sansa. Brother and sister, separated by wars both mortal and political. His eyes shone with pride that she negotiated fearlessly, yet sorrow clouded his brow. They had once dreamed of wolf pups in Winterfell snow, not gilded parchments. Daenerys realized with a pang that Jon himself stood between ice and fire. No longer simply hers, nor fully Sansa's kin. He belonged nowhere and everywhere. She raised her hand. Noise died like embers dunked in water. This charter deserves study, she said. But first, we have graver matters than parchment. Ravens from Enath speak of slavers returning under new flags of a Volantine triarch. Grey Worm sent word 3 weeks past. Enath is a peaceful isle, its people ill-suited to war. Now, Sansa frowned. The Unsullied guard them. 10,000 Unsullied cannot patrol every cove, Daenerys replied. They need ships. Yara's grin flashed white. The Ironborn crave salt pay and open decks. Give me leave and I'll gut any triarch fool enough to anchor off Enath. Tyrion produced another parchment. And while our fleets sail east, Euron Greyjoy's vultures scour the stepstones. There are whispers he hunts dragonbone to fashion a horn, said to bind worms to his will. Menin? Every gaze turned to Daenerys, as though she alone might prevent myth from latching claws into flesh. She felt Drogon circle high above the city, a silent loom of shadow that still unnerved masons. A horn such as Tyrion described had doomed Valyria, if the old epic spoke truth. Jon stepped forward. Let Sansa and Sam oversee the charter's study. Gendry can prepare Storm's End to field galleys. And Lady Yara leads the fleet. I will ride for the Westerlands to quell what Lannister loyalists remain and seize any war chests bound for Euron. Nemsau. Daenerys' heart caught. She had feared giving him command far from her sight, yet trust demanded risk. She nodded once. Take the Queen's shield and 3 cohorts of Unsullied to aid you. Civilians must see banners of dragon and wolf side by side. Sansa opened her mouth to object, but Jon raised a palm. Stark steel stands with me already. This is not your quarrel, sister. Hold the city for the North's sake until I return. Now. Reluctance warred with relief in her eyes. At last she dipped her chin, and the matter was sealed. News of the Confederation debate spread through taverns and tenements, faster than wildfire rumors ever had. Bakers argued over oven rights to sell crusts across new borders. Bankers speculated on coin exchange rates between rolls out of Winterfell's mines and silver minted at Casterly Rock. Street urchins painted fresh sigils, dragon, wolf, rose, kraken, on walls newly whitewashed against the old lion. Some scrawled phrases learned from freedmen: break chains, not backs. In the Red Keep's library, Daenerys found herself poring over charters of the free cities, tracing how Pentos borrowed laws from Bravos, how Norvos demanded spiritual oath taxes to fund their bearded priests. Drogon could not read, but he dozed curled outside the balcony like a sleeping mountain, tail slipping over buttresses with every breath. The city no longer trembled at his presence. Fishermen even claimed their nets brought fatter catches beneath his shadow. As moonless nights grew longer, Bran's ravens arrived upon wings silvered by frost. The parchment bore only 4 words in an ink pale as dawn. Ice stirs in darkness. No seal, yet undeniable. Daenerys carried the scroll to Samwell in the rookery. The maester's eyes widened. His meaning is the lands of always winter, he said. The Night King is gone, but perhaps not everything slept with him. Can White Walkers return? Sam's thumb brushed the scroll. Legend says they are not creatures, but a force. Cold hatred given shape. Force can reform when memory keeps it alive. Mender Rewindal. Daenerys shivered despite the warm coals and braziers. She thought of Drogon roaring defiance at the world's cruelty, of Rhaegal and Viserion gone, and the unknown power of horns made from dragonbone. Send Raven to Jon, she said. Tell him to ride faster than rumor. If ice comes again, we must be ready. Jon's column reached the Golden Tooth as dawn stained the hills, the color of rust. They found the fortress manned by sellswords under banner of a flayed lion, skin hanging in red strips from crossbars, a grotesque echo of Bolton horrors. The Wolf of Winterfell rode to parley. Arrows hissed past his helm before he spoke a word. The skirmish that followed cut through fog and snowmelt, steel ringing against stubborn rock. By dusk, Lannister gold dripped down stone steps in streams darker than wine. Yet prisoners spoke of a greater host gathering at Fair Isle under Sir Forley Prester, and 2 Casterly nephews who claimed the lion still roared. They bartered with ironborn smugglers for munitions, intent on opening westerly ports to Euron in exchange for coin and revenge. Tormund Giantsbane, coaxed south by Ghost's return, cracked laughter like a whip when Jon read the confession. West men think they can dance with krakens? The sea will eat their bones. But his grin faded when Jon confessed worries of horns that charm dragons. Magic songs, Tormund muttered, spitting. I've heard enough songs north of the wall. Jon dispatched ravens to Daenerys, urging caution. He marched his host westward, cutting through still snowy passes where mountain goats watched with amber eyes. Each league carried him farther from the woman he had sworn to follow, queen, lover, or something forged anew, and deeper into lands that once owed fealty to his father's friend. As he rode, dreams dogged his campfire sleep. Visions of a horn carved with twisting runes, throbbing in his palm with a soundless hum, and of Drogon spiraling earthward, trailing smoke like torn banners. In King's Landing, Sansa set quills scratching day and night, revising Samwell's charter while Podrick wrangled scribes who drank more ale than ink. Tyrion supervised with wry humor, praising her skill even as he slipped notes to Davos about grain levies, and to Gendry regarding river bridges. Davos saw more than politics in Tyrion's late hours. He saw a man paying penance. Brienne shadowed Sansa as a hound guards a lamp in wind. Yet even Brienne could not stop the assassin who came an hour before dawn, 8 days after Joan's letter. He slipped between tents like a shadow blessed by silent sisters, poisoned dagger glinting red-black, forged of glassy obsidian, a shard rumored to kill with one scratch. The would-be killer almost reached Sansa's pavilion, but Drogon's bellow shook the sky, and the assassin looked up, saw the dragon's jaws yawning above the curtain of mist, and froze long enough for Podrick's blade to find his back. When Daenerys visited Sansa's sickbed, slashed mistakenly by the assassin's dying thrash but alive, she found the northern lady pale yet unbowed. "You saved me?" Sansa murmured, trying to sit. "No," Daenerys answered, smoothing furs. "Drogon did." "Your dragon saved the queen's greatest skeptic," Sansa whispered, lips quivering with a humor too fragile for laughter. "Perhaps the gods do weave jests." That night, Daenerys climbed the city wall alone. Drogon landed beside her, stone cracking beneath his weight, but he lowered his head until one amber eye met hers. In its reflection, she saw a woman balanced between flames of old fury and delicate sparks of new mercy. She placed her palm against scales warm as a hearth. "Thank you," she breathed. Thunder rumbled beyond the black water, though lightning flashed not from clouds but from distant sea battles, where Yara's fleet clashed with Triarch warships near Naath. Sails burned blue in the darkness, lit by archers' firepots. The sea hissed like a cauldron about to boil over. If the horn existed, it sailed those waters or lay in some kelp-filled hold beneath them. The next morning, Tyrion announced that a Braavosi banker awaited audience bearing urgent news. As the man was escorted through echoing halls, he clutched a damp scroll sealed with Braavos purple titan. He bowed low before Daenerys, eyes darting to the broken throne, as though gauging interest. "Your Grace," he said, accent lilting like water against marble. "Word from Enath. Lord Grey Worm's forces repel slavers, but sustain losses from plague borne by biting insects. They humble request healers and supplies." Daenerys' heart twisted. Aeneas butterflies once made sailors swoon with beauty, yet they carried a fever that felled men within days. Unsullied, immune to fear, were still mortal flesh. She summoned Gilly, now apprentice medic under Grand Master Ambrose, who knew herbs from Old Town's jungled glasshouses. Within hours, wagons rattled with dried willow bark, and potent Myrish extracts bound for the docks, where Davos prepared fast outriggers. Sailcloth snapped in a brisk east wind, and rumors spread that the queen had outfitted healers before soldiers. When evening settled, Daenerys sought Sansa once more. They sat beside a brazier in the Godswood courtyard, where a scorched weirwood stump had sprouted a stubborn shoot against all odds. Crickets chirped between charred roots. "Thank you for protecting Podrick," Sansa said, breaking the hush. "He blamed himself for letting the assassin slip near me. Podrick's blade saved you." Daenerys traced a fingertip along the fresh sapling's new leaves. "Courage is not in preventing every shadow, but in standing when night falls." Sansa's lips curved slightly. Wise words from a dragon queen. She hesitated. "There were moments in winter when I prayed never to see dragonfire in these skies. Now I wonder if dragons are meant to guide our night roads." Daenerys looked toward the heavens where stars blinked like scattered embers. "We are all children in a wide and terrible world, Lady Stark, even dragons." Thunder rumbled again, nearer now. Yet this time it came on dry wind, no storm clouds in sight. Drogon launched from the parapet in a fury of disturbed gulls. A second roar answered, distant but distinct. The first new dragon cry anyone had heard in living memory. Daenerys stood so quickly the brazier toppled, coals scattering. Sansa gasped, clutching Daenerys' arm for balance. Another dragon. The queen's eyes blazed with awe and dread alike. Rhaegal is dead. Viserion was enslaved by death itself. If a fourth lives, it means someone hatched an egg. Someone not of my line. Tyrion burst into the courtyard, breathless. Scouts sighted a winged beast above the Blackwater moments ago. Smaller than Drogon, but growing. How? Sansa murmured. Daenerys' mind raced. Old Valyrian texts spoke of sleeping stones crying out when the world's balance tilted. If someone wielded a horn carved to bind dragons, perhaps it could wake them too. We must find it, she said, voice a steel whisper, before Euron or anyone else bends it to war. Far west of Fair Isle, Jon's host clashed with Lannister partisans in fog so thick arrows vanished after a yard. Ghost prowled the gloom like living moonlight, felling sentries before they knew terror. The battle ended when Jon cornered Sir Forley Prester in a granary aflame. Ash rained through rafters, yet Prester yielded not. Instead, he drew a curved horn bound in brass rings, each etched with glyphs that shimmered red through smoke. He tried to sound it, but the burning roof collapsed before breath found note. Jon dragged the knight from the fire, but the horn cracked in two and melted like wax. When daylight burned away fog, Jon examined remnants. Brass had warped into shapes like talons. Inside, shards of polished dragon bone glowed faint copper, cooling as he watched. The hum from his dreams faded, as though exhaling its last. Prester, coughing blood, confessed to raiders from the Stepstones who had sold him the relic, claiming Euron had more. Where? Jon asked, leaning close. Prester laughed until blood bubbled through lips. In the belly of a kraken, he rasped. Stone dead an instant later. Jon sent ravens bearing the shards to Daenerys, but he kept one fragment no longer than a quill's nib. When he held it at night, it warmed against his palm. When he dreamt, he saw not doom but a vast sea, where icebergs drifted south like pale wolves. Back in King's Landing, the rogue dragon revealed itself 3 nights later above the ruins of the dragon pit. Drogon soared beneath it, wings spread wide but claws kept in check. The newcomer was bronze-green, raw-boned, wing membranes still half-translucent like parchment, held to candlelight. A hatchling scarcely larger than an elephant, yet already wearing the sky like a well-tailored cloak. It wheeled twice, then glided to perch on the shattered dome's rim. Citizens flooded streets for a glimpse, torches making the night glow ochre. Daenerys approached on Drogon's spine, landing within the old amphitheater cracked by the years. Brienne and a score of queens' shield climbed tiers with her. Shields raised. The young dragon cocked its head. A somber figure stepped from an arch on the lower tier. Arya Stark, travel-stained cloak swirling. In her arms she carried a dark oval shape, mottled with whorls, an empty dragon egg. Sansa, who had ridden behind Daenerys, gasped from her saddle. Arya. Arya's smile was grim. I went hunting whispers in Bravos. Found more than whispers. She set the dull eggshell on stone. It hatched 2 months past on a merchant galley when the hull caught fire. Crew feared demon spawn and tried to kill it. I killed them first. Her eyes met Daenerys without apology. I named her Zephyr for the wind that carried us here. She follows only me so far. The bronze dragon, Zephyr, watched Arya with an adoration that mirrored Drogon's for Daenerys in better days. Daenerys touched Drogon's neck, tense chords thrumming. Dragon chooses rider as much as rider chooses dragon, she murmured. She dismounted, stepping toward Arya until they were 2 sword lengths apart. You saved her, Daenerys said. Will you trust me to guide her? Arya tilted her head. You burned slavers and spared a city. Zephyr sensed mercy before we ever reached these shores. Bow. The young dragon crooned, wings rustling like banners. Drogon lowered his great head beside Daenerys. The hatchling approached and brushed snouts with reverence. A cord knit between them. 1 generation and the next, fire tempered by choice. Tyrion, who had followed in awe, murmured to Davos, "Imagine if that horn had hatched 3. "Best imagine how we feed 2, Davos replied. But Daenerys' gaze burned with vision. 2 dragons, 2 riders, she said softly, glancing toward Jon's distant campaign. And winter stirs beyond the wall. Sansa breathed out a plume of white in the night chill. Then the world must be forged anew, again. Daenerys nodded. Certainty crystallizing. We ride north as soon as the shards of that horn arrive. If ice returns, fire will answer. And this time, mercy shall ride with it. Beside her, Drogon lifted his wings, and Zephyr imitated the gesture like a child, mirroring a parent. Their combined silhouettes splayed against the moonlit ruins, 2 shapes of power. One vast, one growing, yet bound by something stronger than command. The crowd below fell silent, hearts thundering in unison. In that hush, a future unfurled. Not of iron thrones or burning cities, but of realms bound by charter and guarded by dragons who chose love over fear, and by men and women who learned, at last, to follow their example. Cloud-stained twilight lay across King's Landing like bruised silk when the raven from Jon reached the Queen's solar. Snowmelt spotted the parchment where it rested against the damp baldric of the courier, and the wax around the direwolf seal was so cracked, Daenerys feared the message within had fragmented as thoroughly. She waited until the boy's trembling had eased, a child barely old enough to heft the saddle, and dismissed him with bread and warm broth before she broke the seal. The words held a chill older than winter. The horn's shards had throbbed in Jon's fire, pulsed when the moon crested late at night, then cooled only after he scattered them in running water. Yet even broken, the relic had carried a note Jon could almost hear, a thin keening, as if buried voices wailed from some ice-bound grave. 2 more horns are said to exist in the belly of Euron's fleet, the letter warned, and the sea swarms with wights that wash ashore still clawing for life. Below that grim warning he wrote a single request. Come north soon. The wall holds ghosts again. Daenerys folded the parchment, throat tight. Yesterday's council had bristled with petty arguments about hull tariffs and Dornish succession. But this message stripped such quibbles to bone. She touched the sill beside her, feeling stone cooled by sea air. Somewhere beyond that horizon Euron Greyjoy hunted dragon slaves. Somewhere beyond the next horizon, something much older stirred. She summoned Tyrion. He arrived half-dressed from a wine-soaked nap, irritated, but the sight of her face sobered him faster than a bucket of harbor water. She thrust the letter into his hand. He read once, twice, then pressed knuckles to lips. I will rouse the council before dawn, he said. Even the Reach Lords will lend corn if the alternative is another long night. Rouse them within the hour, she answered. We fly at first light. Tyrion blinked. We? Drogon and I, Arya, and Zephyr if they're willing. Jon asks, and the north shivers. I will not sit warm while ice seeps south. Tyrion's shoulders sagged under invisible weights she knew too well, fear that every hope they had nurtured might freeze before it flowered. But he bowed. As you command. I will keep King's Landing from devouring itself in your absence. Then Darcy. And Sansa? I will see she rules the city better than you, better than me. Though gods help us if she starts sewing wolf banners from every laundry sheet. A wry smile flickered then vanished. Fly carefully, my queen. Before the horizon bleached from blue to pearl, the dragon pit thrummed with life. Armorers hurried past stacks of fresh spearheads bound for Winterfell, and grooms stapled crates of dried pork beneath the lashings of Yara's swiftest black-sailed longship. Zephyr crouched on a broken column with wings mantled, the young dragon's translucent membranes catching first dawn light like stained glass. Arya stood beneath her scaled throat adjusting a new harness, supple leather lined with padded maester's cloth to keep chafing from the hatchling's tender skin. You're certain she can fly that far? Daenerys asked as she approached. Arya tested a buckle with practiced fingers. She's flown farther, hunting seagulls off Dragonstone. If her wings tire, we roost on a mast. Ironborn won't mind. She'll pick lice from their decks. And now? The hatchling snapped playfully at her braid. Arya stroked the dragon's warm snout and swung astride with an ease that made Daenerys recall her own first ride on Drogon amid Meereen's sunset skies. Some riders were chosen by blood, others by destiny's untamed whim. Across the pit Drogon waited, tail coiled around a pillar half his height. His obsidian eyes reflected pale dawn, and something deeper, determination, perhaps pride that another of his kind would share the wind. Workers cleared space, scattering like leaves before a gale when his chest expanded. Brienne approached wearing new forged steel, chased with pale blue enamel, a cloak whose white-dyed threads fluttered in the breeze. "The Queen's Guard rides with you," she said. 10 knights on the fastest river galleys. They'll meet you at White Harbor. "Keep Sansa safe," Daenerys replied. "If knives lurk in alley shadows again, strike first." Brienne bowed. "With pleasure." Tyrion arrived last, parchment rolls tucked beneath one arm, hair still damp from an hour's bath to scour wine fumes. "Permanent Confederation Charter, provisional but ratified by 7 of 9 present realms," he announced. "Signatures from Sansa, Gendry, Yara, Princess Maria, and half of Highgarden's vassals. Dorne insists on adding a clause about water rights. The Reach wants seed grants, but it stands." He pressed the top roll into her gauntlet. "Carry it north. Tell the dead the living stand together. On paper, at least." Daenerys embraced him, brief but fierce. Then she mounted Drogon, feeling his muscles coil like drawn bowstring. She lifted her voice to the workers around them. "King's Landing is yours to rebuild. Plant gardens where ashes lie. When we return, let flowers greet us." A roar answered. Human throats and dragon both, as Drogon surged skyward. Zephyr followed, flapping awkwardly at first, but smoothing into steady rhythm beneath Arya's guiding hand. 2 shadows crossed the harbor, then whirled north across open water, leaving the boom of their wings echoing off galleons' hulls. Wind howled over Blackwater Bay, tugging scent of brine and tar dyed. Far below, Yara's longships broke waves like night-colored arrows. From the quarter-deck of the Iron Victory, she raised a spyglass toward Daenerys' dwindling silhouette, lips curling in grudging respect. "May the gods she doesn't believe in keep her," she muttered. "And may Euron's balls shrivel before his horn sounds." Salt spray kissed her cheeks, but memory stung sharper. Euron smirking across a blood-slick deck, boasting he would steal every song from every throat in the world. She spat over the rail. This time she would silence his. A lookout's cry split the morning. Sails on the horizon, purple and black triangles against whitening sky. Volantene ships, fat-bellied or thick. Yara snapped the spyglass shut. "Drums," she ordered. Battle rhythm. Below decks, the thrum of goat-hide drums rolled. Heartbeats of krakens hunting. On the OCL, men fastened flensing hooks to ballista ropes. Women strung short bows strong enough to punch through leather armor at 20 yards. As the fleets converged, gulls scattered screaming. Volantene triremes angled to ram, bronze beaks glinting. But iron-born helmsmen knew chop and current better than any southerner. Long ships veered at the last breath, lashing ropes across enemy rails, and iron axes bit wood with ringing certainty. Yara vaulted first, twin blades catching sunlight. Below decks of the enemy flagship she found cages. Slavers, true enough. Chains anchored to bulkheads swayed with half-dead Nethi captives, emblazoned by butterfly tattoos. Guards screamed in Myrish tongues. She answered with steel. By the time Yara cut the last chain, the deck above tilted, listing to starboard where iron-born reavers hacked rigging away. When the sea swallowed that ship, freed men and women crowded laughing onto Kraken decks. Some bowed to Yara, others wept. She set course for a cove on Neath, where Grey Worm's war drums might still echo to the tree line. Yet, as her fleet tacked east, scouts reported unnatural fog rolling from deeper waters. Fog that stank of rot and cold iron. Yara's belly nodded. She ordered torches, lit night and day. Behind their glow she felt the sea gazing. Hungry. Drogon's wings beat northward for 2 days without rest, each mile a tapestry of shifting land. green quilt stitched into rocky dales, then dun moorland scarred by centuries of cattle hooves. By dusk the king's road unrolled beneath them like a pale serpent, flickering with caravan torches. Villagers paused from threshing wheat to gape upward at the mighty shape blotting dusk. Farmers knelt in fallow fields. Children chased long shadows. At every village square Daenerys spied a banner newly raised, the silver direwolf of House Stark fluttering beside her red three-headed dragon. Some banners were crude, tar over linen, no septum of color between heads, yet each snapped with unpracticed pride. She felt warmth behind her ribs where once only vengeance had coiled. Zephyr quickly flagged, wings trembling. Arya coaxed the young dragon to land outside White Harbor under a half-moon sky. A lone horn announced their arrival. The city's walls rang with excitement, but Arya refused fanfare, leading Zephyr straight to an empty pasture beyond the outer bailey. Maester Muncan arrived breathless with salted ox hearts. Zephyr devoured them and collapsed into sleep, curled like a cat. Daenerys spent the night speaking with Lord Wyman Manderly Zaire Wendermere, a barrel-hipped youth already drafting fleet levies to escort supply ships up the narrow sea. He promised 30 nars stuffed with barley and salted cod to sail within 3 days. Stark gold may be thin, he said, but Manderly coin still greases keels. He scribbled signatures while servants brought fatty stews. At dawn, a scout burst through the manor doors, face blanched, clothes rimed with frost, though no snow had fallen. "The dead," he gasped. They tore Eastwatch again. They prowled the tide pools, and the whirlpool below the shadow tower coughs corpses that walk. Daenerys did not wait for further briefing. She roused Arya, who snatched a heel of bread, vaulted onto Zephyr's back, and together they winged north once more. Below, the world narrowed to a river of pine-dark forest, fletched with hoarfrost. Jon reached deep in 3 nights after securing the Golden Tooth, only to find the castle gates flung wide and banners of peace fluttering. But peace remained a thin film over thick bile. In the Lord Solar he discovered Kevan Lannister's widow, Lady Dorna Swift, pale with fever. She surrendered the castle after a dozen wights clawed free of burial vaults beneath the Seepdai. Their chill breath still haunted the crypt. As healers purged infection from Lady Dorna's veins, Jon descended into the vault with Tormund, ghost padding ahead, nose low. Broken coffins and half-eaten bones littered the floor. Amid the debris, they found a steel strongbox splintered by claw marks around its rim. Inside lay severed fingers gripping nothing, and the cold imprint of an object long since removed. If it was another dragon horn, someone had beaten them to it. Tormund kicked aside debris. "Smells like ocean rot," he muttered. He licked snow-chapped lips. Urine's stink travels far from the sea. Jon stared at the empty box. In its darkness he imagined the wail of the horn calling dragons to heal, but also something else. Ice answering ice. Whatever danced now, across seas and glaciers, had allies in unlikely places. A raven awaited outside at sunrise. Bran's thin script. Ice reaches last river. The eye opens. Hurry. Jon's blood chilled. He left Tormund to fortify Deep Den and rode hard for Winterfell. Winterfell's walls loomed giant-shouldered against bleached sky when Daenerys arrived 2 days later, Drogon screeching a challenge, answered by stark trumpets. Snow had fallen overnight, dusting ramparts and the carved faces of dead weirwoods within the godswood. Yet the courtyard bustled with smiths and scribes, spear shafts stacked like wheat, armorers hammering into late hours. Sansa met Daenerys just inside the gate, chin tipped high against frigid wind. Behind her marched a cohort of archers weaving among forges. She spoke first. "We have 2 days, maybe 3, before the fist of this new storm hammers the wall. The Night's Watch is half strength. Even with Karstark levies, our numbers falter." Daenerys slid from Drogon's back. "Jon?" "Not yet arrived." A shadow passed Sansa's gaze. "But ravens say he broke the Lannister holdfasts and rides fast." Before another word, a horn moaned from the east parapet. Deep, long, shivering marrow. They both froze. It was not the mythic call that once summoned wights to the wall's gates, but a different sound, thin, fractured, as if echoing inside glass. Then, a second wail rose, farther north. Dogs in the kennels howled. Riders galloped through the open gate, Night's Watch scouts black with grime. Their commander, Sir Jolly Bywater, slid from his saddle. "My queens," he panted, addressing both women without thinking. "A storm of whites drives south along the shivering sea. Eastwatch's ruins hold them only hours." Steel scraped as guards readied weapons. Sansa turned to barking orders at garrison captains. Daenerys touched Drogon's warm flank, feeling his blood quicken. A third horn blast broke the sky. This one rolled from the west, beyond the wolfswood, not the wall. Arya stepped from Zephyr's side, gripping the hatchling's reins. "That's no warning horn," she murmured. "That's a summons." "To what?" Daenerys asked. "Something wants the horn shards." Arya's gray eyes narrowed. "Or the dragons those shards call." Jon crested the ridge south of Winterfell at dusk. Horse lathered when the last horn blast died. Ghost streaked ahead, yelping joy that drowned fear for an instant. The castle gates opened to swallow them. Sansa raced across the yard despite the ice, arms flung around him before his boots touched stone. Breath plumed white between them when they parted. Jon's gaze fell on Daenerys and Arya, flanking each other like mirrored blades. Sweat and frost glued strands to his brow as he bowed to the queen. "We have little time." Prester's horn was not the only one. Euron sent his nephews to rouse bannermen by promising them dragon vengeance. They carry a second horn south on a black galley, bound for Hardhome's ruined pier. They mean to raise dragons of ice from sea graves. Daenerys stiffened. Can dragons be raised by anything but fire? In the long night, legends claim shadow serpents flew with frost shards for scales. Jon answered. If those were dragons, they died in the battle for the dawn, and their bones sank beyond the shivering sea. Euron's priests of the drowned god believe cold water births gods. They will try. The courtyard's din fell hush around them, a hush of shared memory. Viserion's corpse wrenched living again by the Night King's spear and ice magic. Sansa drew a breath sharp as broken glass. Then we cannot allow them a single note on that horn. Torment arrived from the stables, tugging gloves over massive hands. What's one more mad song in the world? We'll break the horn or the fool who blows it. Plans laid themselves like tilt-yard pikes. Jon would ride north with Tormund, a host of Karstark and Mormont infantry, and Gendry's Smith archers. Daenerys and Arya would fly ahead to scout Hardhome and torch the galley if it neared. Sansa would hold Winterfell, dispersing small folk to hill forts should the wall fall. As torches flickered low, Daenerys and Jon found a moment on the battlements overlooking silent courtyards. Snow drifted like ghosts between them. Words caught in throats thick with things unsaid. Fear they would part into death. Hope they might meet again beneath living sky. At last Jon spoke. If I fall, take the new charter south. Give the world peace. She swallowed. If I fall, promise me you will keep Zephyr safe. He nodded once. She touched his cheek, cold under blood-spattered stubble. He leaned into her palm a heartbeat, then stepped back to mount a fresh horse. Below, the column of riders formed, torches bending in icy gusts. With a barked command, they trotted through the gate into black wilderness. Daenerys turned, cloak whipping around her legs, and climbed the spiral stair to the roof where Drogon perched. Arya joined her moments later, leading Zephyr on a chain of wool rope. The younger dragon's eyes gleamed gold with excitement, sensing battle. Stay high, Daenerys cautioned. Zephyr cannot face siege scorpions if any remain. Arya smiled. Half wolf, half shadow. She hunts shadows better than men do. Together, they mounted. Winterfell's lights shrank below. Then the world fell away into darkness, pierced only by white starlight and the faint aurora that pulsed along the northern horizon. Pale curtains of greenish flame dancing above the lands where winter's heart beat loudest. They reached Eastwatch before dawn, banking low above collapsed towers crusted with sea ice. An army of whites swarmed the shoreline like ants on a carcass, tearing at driftwood to fashion rafts. Their eyes glowed corpse blue, but between ruin and sea, dozens of living figures fought, a ragtag watch garrison, led by Sir Dolorous Ed D. Fires blazed along hastily, erected barriers of splintered palisades. Each torchlight made a white hiss steam. Drogon dove. Flame bloomed across the horde, turning snow to scalding vapor. Whites shrieked without breath. Zephyr followed. Smaller jets of pale yellow fire stitching gaps. Arya whooped, exhilaration singing in every note as the hatchling executed loops with untested agility. But in the blazes backwashed Daenerys saw something worse. 3 figures in ragged, Kraken-emblazoned cloaks, kneeling on the surf line around a wooden crate. One lifted a long pale horn ringed with black iron. Even through the din, she glimpsed runes crawling like frozen tears across its length. Drogon, down. She urged the dragon lower, but even as he banked, the kneeling acolyte raised the horn to cracked lips. A hollow moan vibrated the air, no louder than a funeral bell yet felt in bone. Whites froze, heads tilting as if listening. The sea boiled. Rime crept over Drogon's wingtips, frosting black scales with diamond flecks. Zephyr shrieked, panicked. Her youth betrayed her discipline, and veered off. Arya wrestled the reins. The hatchling clipped a parapet, tumbled, recovered, but lost altitude, landing hard inside the wall's shattered yard. Drogon roared defiance. Daenerys fought rising dread. She felt his muscles strain against some invisible pull. Another note thrummed, higher, razor-keen. Drogon's pupils dilated. His bank slurred into wide circles above the shore against her will. She remembered Drogon's refusal in King's Landing, his choice. She loosened the reins, leaned low against his neck, and whispered past chattering teeth. "You are no slave to horns or men. Feel only my voice." Dam. Together, rider and dragon closed their eyes. She recalled starry nights in the great grass sea, the storm that birthed his egg, the warmth of his body shielding her in a war tent. Love, pure, bright as wildfire without hate. Drogon's heartbeat echoed through her ribs. He shuddered, then steadied. Rime cracked and fell from his wings in glittering showers. He banked once more. Shorter, tighter. Now, she breathed. He plummeted like a falling night. Flame erupted scarlet gold, engulfing acolytes and horn and crate in a single roar. The horn screamed, one final warped note, then exploded, shards flying outward on shockwave of blue-tinged smoke. On the ground the whites convulsed. Some collapsed inert, others reeled, eyes dimming. But a third host beyond, fresh dead claimed by northern cold, still staggered across ice like relentless hunger. Daenerys hauled Drogon skyward again for a broader pass. Below, eddied rallied brothers of the Watch, swords blazing with dragonglass edges. But the tide of death still pressed. Through the smoke, she glimpsed Arya, standing atop the ruptured parapet beside Zephyr, bow drawn. She loosed arrow after arrow, each black shaft fletched from ghost eagle feathers. Where an arrow struck a white's brow the corpse fell. Yet the hatchling's sides heaved. Flight had left her drained. Then a war horn sounded from the west road. Deep, alive. Joan's column charged, torches bobbing. Ghost bounded ahead, white fur a spearpoint of living flame. Karstark pikemen slammed into the whites, shield walls forming crescent arcs. Gendry's smith archers rained fire-tipped bolts. Battle raged from snow-drowned quay to ruined gatehouse. In the chaos, Daenerys spotted a figure wading through corpses toward the shattered horn. A priest of the drowned god draped in kelp-woven robes still dripping brine. Eyes blank, he cradled a horn fragment, chanting guttural prayers to salt and shadow. Daenerys guided Drogon into a swoop, talons closed around priest and horn alike. She felt the fragments chill even through Drogon's scaly grip. The priest howled foam and blood, but his voice died as Drogon crushed him and hurled both into the sea, where fire danced on oil slicks. At dawn only ashes and fog remained. Whites littered ice in heaps. Some still crawled, heads parted from torsos yet mouth snapping. Jon trudged through drifting smolder, arm draped around Ed's shoulders. They embraced Daenerys at the shore, exhaustion etched in both faces. Jon pressed his brow to hers a moment, both too tired for words. "The horn is gone," his eyes said. "But another waits." "Hard home," Daenerys whispered. He nodded. "And beyond, whatever wakes the deep." Behind them, Arya stroked Zephyr's muzzle, the hatchling's wing joint-bound in makeshift splint by Maester Gork's steady hands. Zephyr would not fly for days. "We need every sword for Hardhome," Jon said. "Every flame." Daenerys looked inland. Snowflakes spiraled thicker now, harbingers of deeper winter. But the aurora above pulsed brighter than any dawn. Their war was not finished. It had only found its true battlefield. She climbed onto Drogon's back once more. Jon swung up behind her, arms around her waist. North they would fly, toward Hardhome's haunted cliffs, where Euron's black galley hunted bones and shadows alike. Behind them wolves howled. Dragons roared, and the broken horn's last echo died in the wind, replaced by a fiercer music. The living united, ready to write the next verse with fire, steel, and unbending mercy. "Oh, Kai. Oh." A bitter gale swept the shivering sea like a cleaver, splitting whitecaps into razors that hissed beneath Hardhome's looming cliffs. Dawn bled over the horizon in bruised purples, yet no warmth touched the ruined free-folk settlement huddled at the water's edge. Smoke, thin acrid, rose from makeshift braziers scattered among charred longhuts. Past them, cracked docks jutted like snapped ribs from the black-iced shallows. On the crooked pier at their center, a single vessel waited. A lean, black-hulled galley whose ram was carved in the shape of a kraken devouring a dragon's skull. Metal plates sheathed her flanks, each etched with runes that pulsed faintly as though blood flowed beneath the iron. Within that vessel, Euron Greyjoy stood before a bier of driftwood, his patchless blue gaze fixed on the horn laid across it. Even cracked, the thing was monstrous. Longer than a greatsword, forged of ridged dragon bone banded in weather-pitted steel. Shattered since Valyria burned. Yes, yet the base and mouthpiece remained intact, and hairline seams had been soldered anew with black iron and Stygian glass. Runes in Old Valyrian crawled over its length like ice-white worms. At intervals, the glyphs flared sapphire, throbbing in time with some hidden pulse. Euron's priests, sworn to the drowned god yet half-mad from breathless rites in sunken temples, knelt around him chanting in voices that sounded like surf chewing gravel. Each bore weeping lesions along their throats from earlier attempts to sound the horn. The horn demanded blood payment. Lungs seared, lips blistered black, tongues split like overripe fruit. Still, they exulted, convinced pain was prayer, and death, the drowned god's blessing. Euron inhaled the stench of brine, rot and burning pitch, savoring it. "One more tide," he breathed. "One more note, blown true, and the beasts of sky and sea will kneel." He reached toward the horn, but refrained. Not yet. The last shard still lay buried in his nephew Harlan's flesh, and Harlan's galley had not arrived, delayed by storms or by the Kraken's own hungers. Euron found either possibility pleasing. Sacrifice sweetened ritual. Through a coffin-slit window he studied the landward slope. Night's tattered veil revealed new fires blooming on the distant ridge. Stark banners maybe, or those damned unsullied. If so, they were early. He grinned. Good. Let them watch his coronation beneath a sky too cold for mercy. On the lee side of that ridge, Jon Snow tethered his sweat-slick courser behind a wind-gnarled pine. Armor creaked as he dismounted. Half the leather thongs pinched his ribs where frost had stiffened them. Beneath the darkened visor, his face was a mask of exhaustion and focus. Tormund Giantsbane crouched beside him, breath fogging in streams. "You smell that, Crow?" Tormund's nostrils flared. "Sea rot and cold iron. Bad drink for breakfast." Jon nodded. Across the saddle lines, Karstark spears and Mormont axes formed silent ranks. Catelyn Snow, Lyanna Mormont's cousin, stood at the vanguard. A slip of a girl in boiled leather brigandine, jaw clenched, knuckles milk-white around her war axe. She was 15, yet eyes already held winter's quiet fury. At her back, clustered the smith archers Gendry Baratheon had forged into a company. Bows of dragon glass laminated yew, arrowheads quenched in molten obsidian for the brittle, white shattering kiss. Jon scanned the clouds knifing low overhead. No winged shape darkened them. Daenerys is late. Dragon's wings beat hard against this wind, Tormund said. The worry pricked his tone. And the little one's broken. Jon wished Zephyr's sinew had healed quicker, but Maester Gork had forbade flight for at least a fortnight. Arya had stayed behind with the hatchling near Eastwatch's hot springs, sharpening needles, both her steel and her resolve. A horn blast, thin, distant, sliced the hush, rolling from Hardhome's docks. Even muffled it made Jon's spine vibrate. Every horse stamped, white vapor pluming from flared nostrils. Ghosts snarled, hackles bristling like frost crystals. Gendry jogged up, hammer slung at his back, eyes round. That sound. It's only a practice note, Jon lied. Drogon will answer soon. Another blast came, louder, keening like steel, dragged across Tombstone. Snow loosened from tree boughs overhead, hissing as it fell in a spectral curtain. Jon turned to the assembly. We move now. Shield wall until we breach their perimeter. Do not let any priest or reaver sound that horn again. If Euron holds the last shard, he must fall. He raised Longclaw. Moonlight glinted off the silver wolf's head pommel. For the living, roared hundreds of throats, the words tumbling down the slope in an avalanche. They marched. South and east, above a fastening gale, Daenerys guided Drogon through black clouds that flashed with pale green aurora. Streamers of ghost light rippled around them. Scoured ice flecks stung her cheeks like glass beads. The wind shrieked between Drogon's neck ridges. Every now and again she willed him to signal, to bellow so Jon would know they came. But sound tore away along the gale and vanished. Below, breakers assaulted basalt cliffs. Hardhome emerged, smoke plumes marking the shore. At its center glimmered an unnatural radiance, the horn. Even shattered, it cast a sick glow, the same hue that once lit the Night King's eyes. Memory lanced her heart, Viserion roaring ice flame above the wall. She steeled herself. We are not bound, she reminded Drogon. Fire and blood, yes, but our will is our own. Drogon banked, body vibrating with shared resolve. Lightning forked across the sea, illuminating a second sky shape hidden in the storm. Vast skeletal wings fused with ice. A chill seized Daenerys. A dragon corpse, ribs thick with coral, vertebrae webbed in frost. Magic, dark and cold, stitched sinew where rot had claimed flesh. The new ice dragon's sockets burned blue fire, and its tail ended in a knotted mass of anchors and barnacled chains. The horn had awakened it. Drogon roared, flame surging. The corpse worm answered with a shriek like glaciers calving. A stream of pallid frost erupted from its maw, shearing sleet into crystal dust that danced on the gale. Daenerys clasped Drogon's neck. We fight, my son, no horns master us. Wings cracked like thunder as they dove. On Hardhome's beach Jon's force slammed into Euron's reavers. Ironborn shields, painted with screaming krakens, and gory tide gods, clashed against Karstark oaken bulwarks. Mormont axes whirled, severing limbs. Obsidian arrows hissed overhead. Jon cut through two raiders, spun, parried a third. Longclaw cleaved mail, bone, seawater-soaked wool. Ghost leapt, teeth closing on a priest's arm, ripping horn fragment and limb free. The wolf shook blood from his muzzle, crimson spattering snow. Yet, on the pier Euron himself strode forward, laughter booming above the din. He wore scale armor of blackened Valyrian steel, each plate engraved with a screaming face. In one hand he carried a whalebone great axe, the other clutched the reforged horn. A flicker of blue fire danced within the cracks. Behind him, priests dumped barrels of whale oil around the galley's mast. The stench tangled with salt wind. Snow, Euron called. Nice of you to bring more corpses for my queen of the storm. Jon advanced, boots crunching slush, men parting to let him through. Euron raised the horn to his lips. Jon hurled a dragonglass javelin. It struck the horn's bell mouth just as Euron blew. Shards of black crystal burst outward, the horn's note warped mid-wail into a choked screech. Euron reeled, blood sheeting from his mouth. The blast had backlashed, shredding soft tissue. He roared fury, axe spinning. White hands clawed from surf behind Jon. Sailors drowned months past. Skin sloughed in sheets. Ghosts leapt them, but more emerged. Dozens. The broken horn's squeal had roused a fresh legion from the deep. Jon braced for the charge. And a column of dragon flame engulfed the surf, vaporizing seawater in a hiss like 10,000 snakes. Drogon thundered overhead. Sight of the living dragon drove panic through ranks of reavers. Some fled inland only to be trampled by Karstark thrusts. Jon spared a heartbeat to look skyward, and saw the ice dragon plunging after Drogon, frost breath curling like comet tails. Drogon spiraled, avoiding the blast by wing beats, but ice crystals dusted him. Parts of his left wing membrane crackled stiff. Daenerys leaned low, gaze sharp as Valyrian steel. She spotted Jon, relief and dread mingled. Euron rallied beside her galley's mast, smashing barrels to spill more oil, flame licking up rigging in greasy tongues. His priests finished a final chant and cast themselves into the sea, offering lives to whatever cold god answered. Ice or fire, he shouted to Daenerys, all dragons bow. He swung the axe at Jon. Wood splintered under the blow, driving Jon to a stumble. They circled, snow swirling, flames guttering in gusts. Above, Drogon's claws raked the ice dragon's bony spine, snapping ribs like driftwood. Yet each fragment flared blue and rechnit. Frost exhalations coiled around Drogon's throat. Daenerys felt his arteries constrict with cold. She slashed a saddle strap, releasing one of their last wildfire bombs. A Mirish glass orb they had salvaged from Aerys's forgotten stores. The orb tumbled onto the ice dragon's back. Green fire erupted, washing along skeletal flanks. The corpse beast shrieked as wildfire ate through corrupted sinew, but the flame could not wholly cling. Snow and sleet smothered edges. Below, Jon traded blows with Euron. The Kraken King fought like a storm-given flesh, unpredictable arcs, feints that became hammer pummels. Jon parried a swing meant to sever his neck, pivoted, slashed Euron's thigh. The Kraken laughed through blood. That the best you have, bastard? I've cut throats on decks pitching worse than your footwork. Then no. Euron feinted, buried a dagger into Jon's pauldron. Steel slid between plates, biting flesh. Jon grunted, drove a gauntlet into Euron's jaw, felt teeth crack. Euron staggered, but his backswing caught Jon across ribs. Pain burst white. Then a shadow loomed. Tormund barreled in. Great club high. Euron dodged. The club smashed railing, showering splinters. He countered, axe half-hooking Tormund's knee, dropping the wildling. Before he could finish the blow, a shaft thudded into his ribs. Gendry's arrow. The Kraken snarled, snapped the shaft, advanced. But while he pressed, Jon reached the horn lying shattered on deck. Blue runes pulsed. The fragment Ghost had fetched seconds earlier fit the break like a key. Ice crept along Jon's glove where he touched it, but he pushed, feeling bones freeze. He twisted, snapped the fragment loose again. Light guttered. Above, the ice dragon faltered, a puppet whose strings frayed. Drogon seized the moment, clamping jaws over skeletal neck. Obsidian teeth sheared through frost-furred vertebrae. Blue flame belched sideways as the corpse resumed convulsions. Daenerys shouted, driving Drogon to clamp harder, forcing undead wings into a death spiral. They plunged toward Hardhome's harbor, massive forms locked. Drogon released at last heartbeat, banking as the ice dragon slammed sea ice. The impact shattered frozen sheets, sending geysers sky high. Blue fire sputtered, drowned. A wave of eerie silence rippled outward. On land, whites shuddered and collapsed. Puppet mists cut. Priests screaming praise drowned under retreating tide. Euron felt it. Rage peeled his lips. He lunged at Jon anew, But Gendry blocked. Hammer rammed into Euron's mail. Metal dented. Euron spat blood, spun, yet Tormund rose, club driving into Euron's chest. Ribs snapped, breath whooshed. Still, Euron laughed. He wrenched free, half stumbling, swinging axe in berserk arcs until Jon stepped inside, Longclaw rising. Valyrian steel sang through the gale. Sheared the axe haft, cut through gorget and throat, in single draw. Euron's laughter choked. He fell amid oil-slick snow. Tidewater washed around him, hissing against hot steel where wildfire sparks leapt from the burning galley behind. Jon stood panting. Blood dripped from his arm, staining wolf pelt. Tormund lifted him before he sagged. Around them, reavers threw weapons down, surrender bleeding from their eyes. Farther off, Karstark spears herded survivors. On the high beach Daenerys dismounted, boots crunching frost as she crossed to Jon. Her cloak streamed behind, edges scorched. Snowflakes melted on her cheeks. She pressed trembling fingers to the rip in his pauldron, eyes fierce. "You live," she breathed. "Ace, do you?" he answered. Pain blurred his vision, but her face anchored him. Above, Drogon circled, searching for threats. But none remained. The corpse dragon lay broken, pieces drifting as icebergs already frosting over. Dawn's true light spilled gold across ruins, catching the steam rising from its shattered ribs, like incense curling from a brazen censer. That night, fires ringed Hardhome's shore. Free folk survivors, ragged, wary, dragged nets thick with kelp and broken bones out to burn, while watch brothers recited silent prayers. The storm abated, unveiling skyfields of bruised violet lit by the pale aurora. Snow fell softer, gentler, tired ash after conflagration. Inside the ruined longhouse Jon reclined against a barrel while Gork stitched his shoulder. Daenerys stood nearby conferring with commanders, the horn fragments arrayed on a wolf pelt. Each shard flickered faintly, but when set together, their glow died. Fire melted their frost. The shards became ordinary bone again. "We'll grind them into powder," Gendry suggested, rubbing the scabs on his bow hand. "And scatter at sea," Jon agreed. Daenerys touched the hilt of her belt knife. "We break them now." She handed one fragment to Tormund, another to Catelyn, another to Ghost, who gnawed until pieces fell like charcoal chips. When all were dust and shards, she tossed the remnants into the brazier. Flames hissed green for a breath, then settled yellow. Jon inhaled the warm wood smoke, felt the deep ache of wounds, and realized something inside him had broken too. Some tension wound tight since the long night. Some terror that the dead could return unending. Now it slackened. Yet, new paths opened. Across the hall, Sansa's raven perched on a beam, message tube tied in scarlet twine. Jon cracked the seal. Her script: Winterfell secure. Zephyr healing da. Council awaits word. Bran dreams storms gone. Come home. He read it aloud. Daenerys smiled, relief softening the steel of her bearing. "We will return," she said, gazing at survivors clustered around each hearth. "But north or south we rebuild. Not just walls. Hearts, hopes." Tormund grunted. "Hope tastes like foul broth after a long fast. I'll take it." He slurped from a wooden bowl, beard dripping. Laughter rippled, ragged but real. Gendry knelt by the brazier, adding driftwood. "The living one today. Let's give tomorrow the same gift." Weeks later, Winterfell's courtyard brimmed with life unimaginable in snowbound memory. Free folk tents ringed the outer bailey. Dornish sand-skinned envoys haggled for furs beside reachstone masons quarrying slate. Braavosi smiths tested new windlass designs on ballista frames destined for every northern hold. The Confederation Charter, revised, signed by all 9 realms, hung in the refurbished Great Hall under the watchful gaze of carved direwolves and soaring dragons etched into new timbers. Jon entered through the yard gates as trumpets sang a mellow fanfare. Ghost bounded ahead, scattering ravens. Sansa waited on the landing, flanked by Brienne and Maester Samwell, whose arms were full of scrolls. She offered her hand. Jon clasped wrist to wrist, each scarred palm a testament. The gates yawned wider for Daenerys, who rode at Drogon's side, reins in one hand, a northern child perched behind, eyes wide with wonder. Before curious onlookers, she dismounted smoothly. Sansa descended, skirts brushing newly laid stone. "Queen of Dragons," she said, voice strong. "King in the north. Winterfell welcomes you both." Daenerys bowed, not shallow, not deep, but equal. "Lady of Winterfell, I come as friend." Their clasp lasted only heartbeats, yet energy fizzed through watching crowd. Union, uneasy but real. Inside, beneath vaulted beams, representatives of every realm gathered. Yara's salt-braided warriors jostled Dornish spears. Reach stewards lay bread and salt platters. The High Sparrow's successor, a stout woman named Mother Amara, readied a blessing, though none had asked. At the dais, Bran Stark sat in his wheeled weirwood seat, eyes pale as winter sky fixed on Daenerys, then Jon. He inclined his head, as though ticking some invisible tally. Tyrion waited beneath a candelabra, parchments ready. "All signatories present," he announced with a grin. "Best we consecrate before storms brew anew." One by one, lords and ladies pressed seals to wax under Bran's watch. When Daenerys set her signet, a hush fell. The last to sign was Jon. The old direwolf stamp, reforged from Ned Stark's ring, pressed into warm wax, shaped the final covenant. 9 seals interlocked on a single page: dragon, direwolf, rose, kraken, spear, sunburst, trident, crowned stag, and broken wheel of Pentos. Brienne read the charter's heart aloud. "Realms shall govern themselves but raise council yearly. War requires 2/3 accord. Slavery and the creation of undead are henceforth crimes against all. Dragons belong to no crown but fly in defense of life. Dragons belong to no crown but fly in defense of life." As echoes faded, Bran spoke. The first time his voice had filled the renewed hall. "Summer has seeds in every heart. Nurture or neglect them. The choice is ours." Outside, Zephyr shrieked, launching from a perch above the godswood. Her wing had healed stronger, riding the wind in exuberant loops. Drogon rose to meet her, and for a moment 2 dragons wheeled above the keep, scales flashing bronze and obsidian in pale sun. Children pointed, cheering. Within, council members stood, uncertain. Bran turned to Daenerys. "Mother of dragons, what say you to these skies?" Daenerys looked up through the arrow-slit windows where her children danced. "I say they remind us power must be free, like wings, and guided by compassion, lest horns bind us again." Jon's hand found hers under the table, a brief squeeze. A cheer began, soft, tentative, then swelling as Sansa added her voice, "Gendry his, Davos, Yara, Maria." In time, even Mother Amara's benediction dissolved into open applause. Later, after feast exhaustions turned laughter soft, Arya crept across the roofwalk to where Jon leaned on ramparts, watching snowfall glitter beneath moonlight. "Zephyr's almost grown enough to carry 2, she said. Jon arched a brow. "Taking passengers now? Only ghosts and kingslairs." She smirked. "Soon I'll fly beyond maps." He eyed horizon. "And if storm returns?" Arya's gaze tracked Zephyr winging beyond torches. "Then we ride the wind and face it, horns or none. The point is being ready." Jon nodded. "We will be." Below, Daenerys walked the godswood path alone, cloak hooded. She paused by the fresh shoot sprouting from the old burned weirwood stump, the single green leaf glossy under frost. Candle in hand, tressed fingers to warm bark. Sap pulsed beneath, unstoppable. Bran's voice drifted from shadows. "Burned roots still dream." She looked to him, expression soft. "Ace do we?" He nodded once, wheeled away. She rose, candlelight reflecting in her eyes like twin dragon flames. Behind her, Drogon's distant roar echoed across Winterfell walls. No challenge, no warning, but a lullaby to the realm that slumbered between seasons. Months later, spring hesitated at the neck, but south of the trident orchards flowered. Small folk gossiping under pink blossoms told tales of two dragons patrolling northern skies, of free folk trading pelts for glass at White Harbor, of ships bearing Enethi silk docking unmolested in Old Town. Slavers whispered of an unsleeping fleet of ironborn guardians haunting Stepstone's straits. Pirates swore they saw a kraken queen tie drowned men to masts as beacons against undead storms. But darker rumors persisted. In Qarth's great market, a warlock boasted of forging a third horn from the bones of dreamfires. Across the shadowed wastes of Ashai, red priests argued comets yet to come, and on Skagos, an eagle with burning eyes gnawed at the carcass of a leviathan, whose ribs glowed faint sapphire. Winter had broken, but not ended. One clear dawn at Dragonstone's wind-cut platform, Jon and Daenerys stood side by side facing the sea, high tide swirling beneath black cliffs. Gulls wheeled. They wore plain leather, no crowns, and around their wrists leather cords braided with strands of each other's hair. A small ceremony. Tyrion, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Gendry, and a few sworn siblings of Night's Watch and Unsullied. Tyrion spoke first, voice steady. No iron throne binds them, no septon's grand right. The realms have chosen new rules, and they, new vows. He stepped back. Daenerys traced Jon's scarred palm. From fire, courage. From ice, patience. Together we forge mercy. Jon kissed her knuckles. And guard it with steel. Bran raised a hand, and wind stirred, swirling ash and salt. So witnessed, he murmured. Birds took flight behind him, as though obeying. Drogon landed on the sea stack, Zephyr fluttering smaller beside. Both bowed heads, wings mantling like curtains of living forge. The onlookers felt the quake of promise more than heard it. No horns, no bells, only heartbeat of waves and the hush of new beginnings. As evening lowered, longships lit with lanterns sailed from Blackwater to White Harbor bearing grain. Horse lines crossed the neck with saplings for a shattered godswood in the Stormlands. Ravens carried scrolls of charter law to every holdfast, each sealed not with wax but pressed beeswax shaped like a dire wolf. Entwined by a three-headed dragon? In the rookery of the Red Keep, hatchlings chirped, ravens only, for no dragons would roost there again. Coals glowed on forges, forging plowshares from melted scorpion bolts. Children chased each other through blooming vegetable beds, where wildfire stores had once slept. They laughed, free of fear that skyfire would fall. Yet watchtowers kept vigilant eyes northward, and coastal garrisons studied waters lit by weird moon glare, remembering Hardhome's ghosts. For peace is not a prize, but a crop, sowed, weeded, watered, guarded. And in that watchful peace, the mother of dragons and the wolf of winter carved a new story, one where ice and fire wove tapestry instead of tearing it, where horns were dust, thrones were lumber, and the only crown worth wearing was responsibility. They pledged each sunrise to hold fast against shadow, to shield fragile shoots of hope against frost that could still creep from forgotten corners. They knew winter would return someday, cyclic as breath. But when it did, the realm would stand with dragons that chose love over fear, and with people who remembered that mercy, once seized, need never be surrendered. Above Dragonstone's towers, Drogon and Zephyr soared across a sky turning gold, twin silhouettes framing the sun like bookends of an unwritten chapter. Their roars mingled, not with rage, but with something older and clearer, a signal to every heart below that the story of ice and fire had become not an ending, but a beginning. A warm breeze drifted through the open shutters of the Hands Tower in King's Landing, stirring parchment maps laid across a cedar table polished so often that Tyrion Lannister could see his distorted reflection frowning back at him. Distant gulls called above the black water, their cries mixing with the muted clang of hammers somewhere on the riverfront. He had once measured peace in goblets of wine and the absence of screaming. Now peace meant ledgers balanced in black rather than red, granaries sealed tight against weevils, and patrol rosters unmarred by the ominous notation of missing. Still, he could not shake Bran Stark's final warning from the council the night before. Ravens winging in from the east spoke of a warlock cult and Korth advertising miracles, at prices no honest alchemist could match. Miracles, in Tyrion's experience, were disasters that had yet to send a bill. He set down a quill, stretched cramped fingers, and willed away a persistent ache behind his left temple. Footsteps padded outside. A quiet tap followed. 3 gentle raps, the rhythm Davos Seaworth adopted so servants would not shrink in terror at the knock of a former smuggler. "Come," Tyrion called. Davos ducked inside, the brim of his belt knife catching sunlight. He smelled of fresh sea wind and tar. Some habits never washed out of a man's bones. "Raven from Dragonstone," he said, passing a sealed tube. Marked urgent. Tyrion cracked the red-dyed wax and unfolded thin vellum. He read twice, cheeks draining color. "How urgent?" Davos' single brow lifted. "Judging by the look on your face, very." Tyrion swallowed. "Daenerys and Jon sail at fortnight's turn, bound for Braavos. They request we meet them there with a small embassy." Something about a trading pact and a missing shadowbinder. A shadowbinder. Davos scratched the salt and pepper stubble at his jaw. "Last time I crossed paths with one of those, Stannis' ships were burning, and Melisandre swore gods danced in the flames. Let us hope this one dances somewhere we can't see." Tyrion rolled the parchment. "Ready a swift galley. Sansa will fuss, but Winterfell can spare me. The charter can run a week on fresh ink and good intentions." "Bam?" Davos eyed him. "And the Queen's Guard? Brienne will not let the hand wander abroad without at least 2 trusty fellows brandishing swords larger than you." Tyrion snorted. "Tell Brienne she may dispatch Sir Podrick and Sir Pate if it eases her conscience. I trust Podrick's pointy stick more than half the lords in this city." Davos' lips quirked. And Pate's no slouch with crossbow or quip." Then he sobered. "I'll see her informed. And I'll need a manifest." A sharp clang of a bell in the harbor hacked through their conspiratorial calm. Tyrion stiffened. The harbor bell tolled only for incoming ships flying war banners or bearing plague. 3 strokes. Pause. 1 stroke. Ship in distress. More bells along the quay answered, echoing across tiles. Tyrion scooped a parchment satchel, threw on a cloak. "Later, Davos. For now, best we greet misfortune before it plants roots." Sun pressed hot and hard as Tyrion and Davos rode together down the sloping street that spilled toward the docks. Work crews paused along scaffolds to watch the commotion. Officials in city watched cloaks pushing through midday crowds. A gull wheeled overhead, feathers white as a maester's robe. At Fishmonger's quay, a long-shaped vessel drifted under tow. An Eastern Drummond. Hull lacquered glossy obsidian. Sails in tatters. Purple firepots, snuffed piles of ash now, rimmed the prow, and a figurehead shaped like a bearded face with sapphire eyes jutted above the waterline. A hush spread among dockhands. At the gangway, 3 gaunt sailors in lacquered leather stumbled onto the pier, half carrying a 4th whose arm ended at a hastily tourniqueted stump. Ink-black stains crawled up the injured man's veins. His eyes fluttered, pupils blown wide. City Watch Captain Sir Martin Slint knelt, sniffed. "Poison." The sailor rolled his head. "Dreamshade," he rasped in the Free City's guttural accent. "Stole our breath. Blue. Horn." Tyrion's heartbeat thumped. "Horn? What horn?" The sailor seized Tyrion's wrist with startling speed. nails digging crescent moons into flesh. "Hollow Kingsorn," he croaked in Valyrian. "Black as night," sang in the storm. It called him. Who? Daenerys, rider of frost, father of embers. His bones woke beneath the jade sea. Saliva foamed on his lips, pupils vanished into skull white. Davos made the sign of the mother. Tyrion felt nails cut deeper until the sailors spasmed and collapsed dead. Dockhands backed away as though fearing the corpse would rise. The injured crew's companions muttered of curses and living shadows before watchmen ushered them toward holding barracks for quarantine. Tyrion's mind raced. Qarthian warlocks. Horns. Awakened bones in distant seas. It tied too neatly into Bran's cryptic mutterings. Then another thought chilled him further. The ship's figurehead's eyes glowed faintly, almost imperceptibly, like coals glimpsed through ash. The bells above ceased. Sound rushed in, gulls, lapping waves, shouts of cart vendors. But Tyrion heard only the phantom echo of a horn note twisting across black water. Across the narrow sea, Braavos rose from morning mist, its canals silver ribbons between domed palazzos and crooked bridges. Moonpool ferries drifted slow, their gondoliers humming soft tunes to match the slap of oar blades. Jon Snow stood at the prow of the Silverwing, scanning the Titan's wide harbor mouth. Salt wind ruffled his loose hair. He had forgone braids once favored by Stark kin, letting strands whip free like a banner half-faded by war. Daenerys emerged from the cabin wearing a sleeveless riding coat of plain charcoal wool. Gone were the ornate dragon-stitched gowns of dragonstone. Here she looked every bit a sea captain's equal, save the subtle golden torque at her throat. Coronet delicate, enough to remind Braavosi dignitaries that dragons did not shed skin that easily. She joined him. "The city seems quiet." "Quiet for Braavos," he answered. "I expected more lanterns. They burn them at dusk for the Sea Lord's festival week." Jon exhaled. "Will Tyrion arrive in time?" She smoothed a curl of hair freed by sea spray. "He will. Davos can pace a deck faster than any Sea Lord's galley can row." "Dow." She said no more, but he could read the worry tucked behind her eyes. Reports of a warlock's horn, fresh shadows in Korth, the plague ship, they circled her thoughts. Since Hardhome they had known quiet months, but never truly unclenched. One ice dragon vanquished did not guarantee some other necromancer would not fish another corpse from the depths. The harbor pilot hailed from the bow. Their ship glided between Narwhal Rock and the Titan's Causeway, headed toward a private jetty near the Iron Bank. Two narrow masts flagged banners. The three-headed dragon entwined with a dire wolf. Braavosi boatmen dipped poles in salute. Courtiers in bright sashes watched from balconies. But on one marble arch, Jon spotted a figure cloaked head to toe in night blue silk. The figure raised a hand, gesture like a blessing or a warning. Then it was gone. Jon frowned. The Sea Lord's court mirrored a garden of mirror-polished obsidian. Water threads cut across the floor in looping patterns, forcing visitors to step over them or detour along narrow bridges. Candles floated in glass bowls, their reflections dancing beneath. Jon and Daenerys waited while portico guards announced them. Sea Lord Benaro Rogare, white-bearded and sharp-eyed, greeted them beneath a ceiling carved with leaping dolphins in inlaid lapis. "Wolves and dragons returned to Braavos at last," he said in accent clipped by decades of trade talk. His gaze lingered on Jon's sword hilt, Longclaw's wolf-head pommel now wrapped in unadorned leather to hide Valyrian gleam. Pleasantries exchanged, they settled into a tight semicircle beside a koi pond. Benaro's spymaster, a stooped woman wearing a silk shawl patterned like storm clouds, Mistress Pale, unrolled a map across a table. Tiny crystal weights pinned corners. "Since the Jade Sea storm," she began, "fishermen from Yeti report bones, dragon bones, washing ashore. Blue embers dance on the ribs by night. Others speak of a horn call echoing over the water, low and long." She tapped a mark east of Korth. "Here, at Stormsong Shoals, the wreck of a large vessel charred black. Survivors claim the shadow of a wing passed overhead." They babble about a rider robed in smoke and flame. Daenerys' pulse quickened. Our scholars suspect the warlocks rebuilt a Valyrian dragon-binding horn. But horns demand blood. They kill whoever blows them. No such corpse found? Mistress Pale shook her head. 3 corpses melted to bone, eyes burned to glass. One had lips fused to the horn mouth. Burned, yet the horn, they say, was cold to the touch. John felt Longclaw's weight heavy on his hip. What of Euron's body? Lost at sea like so many, Pale said. Some swear his corpse walks, but sailors weave darker fancies than Carthane's splendor. We trust only coin. Benaro folded hands. Braavos will not host this horn. If it floats west, we intend to smash it. That is why we asked you here. He met Daenerys' eyes. We wish to hire your dragon. John stiffened. Daenerys measured her words. My dragon is not for hire. But Braavos has long opposed slavery and sorcerous tyranny, as do we. If threats rise, we face them together. No coin required. The Sea Lord's frown carved valleys in his cheeks. Mistress Pale studied Daenerys, then nodded slowly. Very well, but to strike an enemy, one must know where it hides. We think the warlocks congregate on the Isle of Cedars, ruins of an ancient Valyrian way station. She passed a parchment scrap. Ink sketch of Cyclopean Tower half swallowed by jungle vines. Daenerys accepted. We will go. Benaro tapped the koi pond rail. Braavos will lend 2 swift cogs to resupply at Summer Isles. Then follow your lead. John sensed the meeting drawing to close, yet unease gnawed him. There is something else, he said. A figure watched us from the harbor arch, cloaked as if to hide more than face. He glanced at Mistress Pale. Your spies would know. She tilted her head. Many watch new guests, none wearing night blue. Daenerys set the sketch aside. Perhaps a remnant of the faceless men. Their hall stands silent since the doom of the Night King, yet whispers claim they still sell names. John's grip tightened. Faceless killers rode whispers like ravens. He would sleep with one eye open. That evening, as glass lanterns lit the moon pool, and purple fireworks blossomed above festival barges, Tyrion's galley slipped through the lagoon channel. Brienne, Podrick, and Pat disembarked with him, their boots chiming on cobblestones. They found the Silverwing crew moored under the Dragonwolf standard at an ivy-clad quay. Podrick led the way up a canal footpath where fireberry bushes scented the air. But when they turned into a narrow courtyard, shadows shifted. Too many figures for a quiet lane. Podrick drew sword. Brienne's bright steel hissed from its scabbard. Faceless men, 4 of them, stepped from archways, wearing bland servant garb. One held out empty hands, palms up. Another produced a slender dagger, offered hilt first. Gift, he said softly. No blood, only message. Tyrion eyed the blade. Thin Valyrian steel, glowing faint blue, along grooves. A single word etched into the tang. Xerus. The tallest assassin inclined his head. Tell the Dragon Queen. The many-faced god wishes no return of broken cycles. Yet one has offered us every name for the gift of horns. His eyes, dark as lacquer, reflected lantern light. No man can pay such a price. But they seek to nonetheless. And now. With that, the 4 bowed as one, and vanished into angle of alley walls. Not a single splash betrayed water escape, no footfall to mark stone. Brienne exhaled slowly. Well, that is new. Podrick licked lips. Are they going to? No, Tyrion murmured, weighing the dagger's cool balance. They delivered an omen, and a coded plea. Whatever stirs in shadows, even the god of death disapproves. He looked at Brienne. We best hurry. The council gathered at the Sea Lord's guest palace before dawn. Daenerys, Jon, Tyrion, Brienne, Davos, and Mistress Pale stood around a sand table map of the eastern seas. Braziers flickered blue flame. Gulls mewled outside open arches. Tyrion set the faceless blade on the table. Gift from men without faces. They warn us someone offers limitless bounty for your deaths, in exchange for, not coin, horns, plural? John's jaw tightened. More than one, then. Mistress Pale traced a sand ridge shaped like a crescent. Carthian scrolls speak of 3 horns forged during the last gasps of Valyria's war priesthood, each tuned to a different harmony. 2 lost to time, 1 rumored found by Euron, and broken at Hardhome. The hollow Kingshorn may be the second. And now? Daenerys tapped the blade. So the third lies where? Another ruin? A Shadowland? No, Tyrion said. North of here. He pointed to the heart of Westeros, to the Vale of Arryn. Do you recall the corpse dreams Bran spoke of? Visions of winged bones entombed beneath the icy spine of the Mountains of the Moon? He believes that's where the final horn sleeps, sealed centuries before Aegon's conquest. Jon swore softly. If someone unites those notes, their music could bend more than dragons, Tyrion finished. Some priests believe such resonance can tear the boundary between living and dead. Command all who hear. Brienne crossed arms. Then we protect the Vale. A garrison at the Bloody Gate, scouts on Sky Sister peaks. Mistress Pale countered. But our one clue leads southeast to the Isle of Cedars. We split forces or risk chasing shadows while the warlocks secure the last key. Daenerys' eyes flicked to Jon. We split. He nodded. I ride west with Podrick and a handful of Dirigaard. We'll warn Lady Alyssa Arryn and search old crypts. Tyrion sails east with you, Davos, and Torment, Davos added, having slipped in dawn quiet. The wildling chieftain hoisted a keg of spiced ale over one shoulder. Winter's done chewing on my beard. Time to find warmer evils. Daenerys smiled despite tension. We accept. I'll fetch my axe, Tormund said bluntly. By weeks, turned 2 expeditions diverged. The Silverwing, refitted with light ore banks and Braavosi Marines, slipped at dawn toward the summer sea, Drogon's soaring sentinel above. Jon departed across the Erie's mountain passes astride a fast gelding named Ash. Podrick, Pate, and a dozen veteran rangers rode behind, their cloaks bearing the white direwolf and dragon insignia, quickly dubbed Storm Wolves by tavern gossips. The Vale Road proved treacherous. Spring melt triggered avalanches that thundered down granite walls. At Giant's Lance foothills, they camped near a tarn where ice still floated. Stars pricked black canopy overhead. Campfire embers danced. Podrick strummed a travel lute, plucking half-remembered chords of Sweet Becca of Fair Isle. Jon listened, letting the melody smooth edges of fatigue. Since Hardhome, ghosts of Frostwights haunted edges of his dreams. Each time he saw Viserion's corpse spearing into the wall anew. Yet when he woke, Zephyr's playful chirrups replaced screams, and dawn found Daenerys' handwriting on parchment. Trust the dawn. He folded those notes into leather pouch near his heart. Tonight worry curled deeper. Bran's ravens, laconic as ever, reported no abnormal visions, yet Jon felt dread pooling like stormwater just beyond earshot. Patty approached with a wineskin. Maester Gork says the old mines under Strong Song might house dragon fossils. Some say whole caverns glow at night. Jon accepted a sip. Dragon fossils seldom glow, unless fused to wildfire veins or sorcerous crystals. Pat shrugged. Well, small folk exaggerate. But I've learned one thing from tales. Where there's a story, there's at least a kernel of s. A shriek split darkness. Rangers leapt to feet, weapons out. Across the tarn, a black shadow rose. No bigger than a warhorse, yet winged. Spiny. For heartbeat, Jon feared a newborn ice dragon. But moonlight revealed feathers, not scales. An enormous moondrake, rare cousin to wyverns, its beak jagged like broken glass. It circled, eyes gleaming amber, then banked toward camp. Jon loosed arrow, the shaft skimmed wing membrane. The drake screeched and vanished into night. Podrick exhaled. False alarm, Lord Snow. No. Jon scanned sky. Moondrakes nest near high cliffs. If one hunts this low, something drove it away. Now, they kept watch, until dawn tinged peaks pink. Nothing else stirred. But unease thickened. Half the world away, the silver wing skirted the red waste's parched coastline. Sun hammered deck planks, bleaching wood. Davos steered from shade of a sail, adjusting course by starboard crosswinds. Tyrion emerged from below decks clutching a damp cloth to his neck. On the horizon, Isle of Cedars rose, a jumbled green mound crowned by a basalt tower. Seabirds wheeled above, yet no smoke from hearths. Daenerys stood near the bow wearing a light tunic. Her eyes narrowed. Drogon circled overhead, winged slapping thermals. Jungle odors rode on the breeze. Orchid, rot, spice. But something acrid laced the scent. They beached by a shallow lagoon, wading ashore with a dozen marines and Tormund's wildlings. Vines as thick as forearms dangled across half-buried porticos. Bas-reliefs of dragons coiling around robed figures peeked through moss. Strange glyphs weathered but not erased. Tormund hefted axe. Smells like lizard piss. Not wrong. Davos crouched, touched sticky substance on stone. Guano bat. A colony roosts inside. Tyrion followed Daenerys into a cleft hall. Eyes adjusted to gloom. Walls etched with repeating pattern of intertwined horns. Floor sloped downward to a domed chamber. At its center lay a dais draped in web? No. Fine filaments of petrified smoke. Daenerys stepped closer. A metallic echo rang faint. She lifted a blackened ring the size of a bracelet. The severed mouthpiece of a horn. Blue runes flickered then winked out. It was here, she murmured. Someone smashed it, or tried to. Tyrion crouched. Note where the break is. He traced fracture line. Matches neither shard from Hardhome nor Kingshorn drawings. So, 3 horns existed. Yes, this the third. Broken, yet still humming. But if Daenerys wields the Kingshorn, Davos said, and someone offered faceless men every name to kill rulers who'd oppose him. Daenerys finished. Then he seeks shards to refurbish what's lost. Each note adds resonance. If he obtains fragments from every horn, perhaps he can create one perfected instrument. Tormund scowled. Over my frozen corpse. An echo drifted from tunnel mouth. Feet. Sauntering. Tyrion signaled marines. Steel rasped quietly. A woman emerged from shadow wearing robes, the color of dried violets. Her skin was burnished bronze. Hair shaved except a single braid, tipped in silver bells. She raised empty hands. Peace, Stormbreaker Queen. I am Ve Awatha. Of the Corthine White Shadows. Daenerys kept voice steady. The white shadows aided the masters who crucified children along Marine's road. Vi inclined her head. Those were red shadows. We are white. We oppose sorcery unbound. She gestured at broken hornpiece. We shattered the third horn but could not extinguish its breath. Tyrion's brow rose. Careless. Impossible, she replied. Its breath is the screams of Valyria. Only death of one touched by flame and frost might still it. She looked to Daenerys, then at building worlds last living dragons overhead. Or their child. Drogon's roar rumbled faint. Daenerys ignored it. Where is Daenerys? Vay's braid bells chimed. Between worlds. He walks shore between wakefulness and dream, amassing shards in echoes. But he will cross when moon swallows sun. Tyrion exhaled. Eclipse. He rifled memory. One due in 3 weeks over the shivering sea. Then we have 3 weeks, Daenerys said. Vi extended a parchment inscribed with cobalt ink. Map to the echoing shore. Bring fire. We will bring knives. Tormund barked a laugh. Sound plan. Daenerys accepted. Their fingers brushed. Vi's skin felt chilled despite heat. But behind them, deeper in ruin, something clattered. A marine cried out. Blue glow flared. All turned. A hooded figure yanked free, a wedge-shaped horn fragment from a plinth, then sprinted toward jungle. 2 accomplices hurled green vials. Glass shattered, releasing noxious mist. After them, Daenerys shouted. Tormund bounded ahead, muscles exploding. Marines followed. Davos tugged Tyrion's sleeve. "We keep our queen safe." But Drogon had launched himself low between cedars, wings beating tropical gusts. He loosed flame. Jungle ignited in a wall of orange. Smoke roiled. Screams cut short. In moments, the thieves' path blazed like a comet trail. Tyrion found one charred body gripping the fragment. Smoke still curled from husk. The fragment itself glowed faint blue within cracks, yet unconsumed. He used a sword tip to pry it free. Hiawatha whispered, "Even dragonfire cannot cleanse breath of the horn." Daenerys stared at the fragment. "Then we take it, guard it, and deny Xerxes his final note." But Tyrion felt weight heavier than steel. 3 shards now existed. One at Winterfell with Zephyr's keepers. One in severed Kinghorn fragments at King's Landing gilding citadel vaults. And this. How long could they protect all? In the Vale, Joan's party reached Strong Song on a sun-slashed afternoon. The Holdfast's towering spire caught light like a blade. Lady Belisha Royce greeted them amid a half-built windmill, hair tucked under linen coif. "We sealed the deepest mines last month," she told Jon while leading him down narrow stairs to an ancient crypt. Miners spoke of whispers swirling in shafts. No echo returned. Some vanished. Carved pillars supported a cavern glittering with quartz veins. Fossilized dragon vertebrae arched along one wall, plated with mineral deposit that shimmered pale. At the far end stood a sarcophagus carved of fused bone and steel, a coffin fashioned from what looked like a horn. Pay traced runes with gloved finger. "Old Valyrian," reads, "Here sleeps Kyramar Blackflame, who stilled the world's crying at cost of his own." He looked uneasy. Prophet said only his vow keeps doom locked away. Podrick whistled. "And we're about to open this?" Jon ran a hand along lid's seam. Cold radiated. He pressed ear. A low hum tickled cartilage, much like ice wind singing through Hardhome's ruin. Not open, he decided. Buried deeper. But as he turned, floor tiles shifted. A section of wall slid. Shadows poured. Robed assassins wearing night blue. Podrick shouted. Swords flashed. Jon pivoted, dragging Longclaw free in time to parry twin daggers dipped in something tar black. Combat erupted in close quarters. Steel ringing off bone pillars. A figure detached from throng, masked, wielding Valyrian stiletto. He lunged at Jon's back, ghost intercepted. Jaws crushing forearm. Poison blade clattered. Podrick fought 2 at once. Pate tackled a third with mace swipe. Rangers formed spears into hedge. But the assassins were not silent shadows. They chanted in guttural drone. Sound reverberated, causing quartz veins to hum. The sarcophagus lid trembled. Fissures seeped violet light. Jon shouted, "Break their voices." Podrick jammed sword pommel into an assassin's throat. The chant faltered, but one woman still sang, single unbroken note rising. Runes on lid blazed brighter. A crack split the coffin. Fragments of fused horn broke free, hovering mid-air in arc's eye. Jon Bull rushed the singer, felt knife slice along rib. Pain flashed red. He rammed shoulder, sent her sprawling. The song ceased. Light sputtered. Fragments clattered to floor. Silence crashed like wave break. Remaining assassins fled into dark corridor. Podrick panted. "You alive, m'lord?" "Had worse." Jon pressed hand to bleeding flank. Pat already rummaged for bandage. "But we're out of time." He nudged a fragment with boot. It glowed, bluer than wildfire, colder than ice. Ghost whined warily. Spring storms lashed Dragonstone when Daenerys' fleet returned bearing cedar-wrapped horn shard. Sansa awaited on pier, cloak whipped by wind. Tension etched her brow at news of Vale attack. That night in Dragonmon's map room they assembled. Bran arrived by Raven escort. Arya flanked by Zephyr Shadow at window. Samwell Tarly representing Citadel scholars. Yara via mirror crystal sending from Blackwater Bay. and Prince Gendry storming in after ride from Storm's End. Jon looked pale but upright, bandage hidden under jerkin. He placed veil fragment beside the cedar's piece on glass table. Together they hummed a near inaudible chord that made Bran's chair vibrate. Samwell swallowed. Each part resonates to the others. Brought within 100 paces, they begin searching for missing components. Bran's misty gaze unfocused. I see 3 horns again. No, 1 horn broken 3 ways. Shards yearn to reunite. In eclipse their harmony will call across all boundaries, life and death both. Sansa laid hand on table. So we destroy all shards, but dragonfire fails. Wildfire fails. What then? Arya murmured. Valyrian steel can break sorcery sung in fire. Ice forged at heart of world can break what fire made. Eyes turned to Jon. He recalled forging Dawn's Edge at the frozen Lake of Tears using dragonglass and Valyrian steel. Valyrian blades exist. Forges still burn in Qohor's secret halls. But we have maybe 2 weeks. Tyrion tapped chin. We don't need to melt them. Just cast them far apart so Toon can't unify. But Watchers with wings can still fetch, Brienne said. Xerxes rides shadows. Daenerys straightened. Then we hide 2 shards where no one can reach, and guard 3rd with Dragonflame, until eclipse passes. After, their power wanes, we bury under mountains of solid rock. Yara's crystal flickered. Ironborn can sail 1 fragment to crash it into Maelstrom's maw south of the Basilisk Isles. No Leviathan climbs out of that whirlpool. Gendry nodded. Storm's End forges can fold another into anchor chain before Yara departs. Iron thick enough to mask resonance. Jon countered, but Xerxes will seek whichever piece remains visible. He looked at Daenerys. That means Dragonstone. She met his eyes. Then so be it. Preparations consumed days. The forge at Driftmark hammered anchor plates thicker than wagon axles. The Ironborn flagship, Black Lady, fitted new hull strakes for deep-sea journey. Storm's End smiths folded the veil fragment into anchor eye, laid within 4 feet of wrought iron. Gendry oversaw each hammer stroke, quenching in salt water mixed with weirwood ash to mask magic. Yara sailed south, banner snapping. Her envoy vow. May depth swallow this curse. The 2nd shard load traveled to Old Geassi's deepest mine via Bravosi couriers, guided by White Shadow operatives. The mine shafts plunged miles beneath desert sands. Molten groundwater seeped vents, promising quick entombment. Daenerys kept Cedar's fragment at Dragonstone's Sea Dragon Tower. Drogon nested coiled around parapet. Zephyr patrolled skies, heeled wing thrumming air. Unsullied battalion ringed the citadel. Tormund drilled wildling archers on cliff trails. Bran arrived in night before eclipse, rolled into the painted table hall. He spoke little, but his eyes glimmered with stormlit depths. He comes, he whispered during final council. Song of horns, threads through dreams. Jon tightened sword belt. Let him come. Daenerys placed palm on Map Island, where Dragonstone glowed green. Tonight we end this. Eclipse morning dawned sapphire. Winds stilled. Sea mirrored cloudless sky so perfectly gulls seemed suspended between twin heavens. Across Dragonstone ramparts, archers filled cauldrons with scalding sands. Brienne drilled Queen's Guard in shield wall formations around inner courtyard. Dragons circled, restless. Near midday the sun's face began to bite, a black crescent eating gold. Shadows lengthened like claws. Birds cried in confused chorus. Workers lit torches, though day remained. In the courtyard Bran's chair braced beside an obsidian brazier. Arya stood near him, knives glinting. She wore the hound's helmet beneath ungentle grin carved since childhood. Samwell frowned over scrolls. Tyrion paced, counting breaths. Then came the fog, rolling off waves like wool, unnatural, silent, swallowing sound. From it emerged a fleet of skiffs, hulls carved bone-white. Rowers in masks of bleached faces stroked without splash. Behind their ranks stood figures draped in shadow silk, warlocks. At their head, Xerxes. He looked younger than myth. Smooth skin, eyes twin blue fires. But his aura distorted air. In his left hand he held brass mouthpiece split from kingshorn, but reforged with cedar's banding. In his right, a staff topped by cracked sapphire that thrummed pulses. Fog parted for him. He stepped onto beach. Sand steamed beneath feet. No rowlock creaked. Silence deafened. Atop ramparts, Tormund spat. Creepy. He knocked arrow aflame with dragonglass tip. Daenerys raised the staff. Warlocks began to hum, a chord of 3 notes, though only their throats moved. The fragment inside Sea Dragon Tower hummed in sympathy. Blue veins crawled across its surface. Dragons shrieked, wings faltering. Zephyr banked sideways, spasmed. Drogon bellowed. Flamegout stuttering. On beach, waves reared into shapes of skeletal serpents glistening water. They slithered forward. Daenerys stepped to battlement, hair streaming. She shouted Valyrian phrase that cracked like thunder. Drogon steadied, roared back, and unleashed torrent of fire that incinerated front wave of serpents. Water hissed, vapor roiled. Daenerys laughed, a sound like icicles breaking. He blew the makeshift horn mouthpiece. A single note wailed. It struck Drogon mid-air. The dragon lurched, wings seizing. Zephyr plummeted but recovered at last moment. Skimming waves. Daenerys felt pain spike through her own chest where heart and dragon soul twined. She forced calm, whispered, "You choose, Drogon, not him." Jon drew Longclaw. Queen's Guard opened gate. He led charge down switchback to beach with Tormund, Podrick, Brienne at flank. Unsullied columns marched tight. Spears angled. Warlocks extended staffs. Blue lightning whipped into sand, fusing glass trenches. Men fell screaming. Arya sprinted along parapet, launched a rope, swung down mast to land behind Daenerys' ranks. Knives flickered, severing throats silently before throats could chant. Each fallen warlock dulled note's strength. Bran's eyes rolled white. He whispered into wind. Faint shapes rose from ground, ghostly visages of children of the forest, unseen since Dawn Age. They circled Daenerys' staff, vines of golden light constricting. But Daenerys drew dagger. Sliced palm. Spattered blood on shard staff. Light sizzled. Vines withered. He advanced toward gate where Daenerys descended stone stairs. Their eyes locked. Dragonfire against abyssal frost. Behind her, Bran whispered louder. "The pool between worlds' tears. Close it now." Daenerys raised hand. Drogon dove, flame swirling. She shouted for Zephyr. Small dragon answered, weaving under Drogon's stream to flare her own lesser fire at staff. Daenerys threw up arm. Frost shell formed. Flames smothered into steam. Jon's spear contingent reached beach. Fighting erupted. Unsullied precision against masked reavers conjured from fog. Each warlock fell but disintegrated into shadow that tried to slither back toward Daenerys' heels. Brienne cleaved one, but shadow reknit. Podrick hurled torch. Fire burned silhouette into nothing. Tyrion, from parapet, realized. Burn their shadows. He yelled hoarse. Wildling archers dipped arrows into tarpots, ignited them. Burning shafts rained. Daenerys lifted horn mouthpiece again. But Arya was there. Springing from behind, needle flashing at his neck. He whirled. Dagger scraped sparks off Valyrian steel. She ducked spin kick, sliced his thigh. Daenerys backhanded, an unseen force hurling her yards. She rolled, winded. Hardly pausing, he blew mouthpiece once more. Longer. The shard inside Sea Dragon Tower pulsed. Shards half a world away thrummed, albeit muffled by anchors and mine depths. Drogon screamed, not rage, but agony. He hovered, thrashing. One wing beat flung Zephyr into side of tower. Young dragon yelped. Daenerys felt tears scald eyes. She reached tower door, raced to fragment chamber. Blue glow filled corridor like drowning ice. She drew bare hand along fragment. Flesh blistered. She seized it anyway. Heat and cold warred, but her blood of dragon resisted. She heaved the shard into brazier of molten bronze, fueled by wildfire powder. Green jets shot up. But shard remained intact, humming angrily. Bran's voice rang in her skull. Blood of fire and frost. She remembered Vay's prophecy. Only death of one touched by flame and frost may still it. She thought of Jon's resurrection at Castle Black, of his scars where ice and fire mingled, dragonglass knife wound, white walker steel, gash, Daenerys dragon breath, that revived collapsed lungs during Long Night's final stand. He was life forged in elements. She seized shard, sprinted downstairs to courtyard where Jon dueled Daenerys amid whirl of steel and frost magic. Each horn note jarred Jon's sword arm. Frost-filmed long claw? She shouted. Jon glimpsed her, saw a fragment. Realization dawned. He parried another strike, drove forward. Daenerys raised horn to lips yet again. Jon dropped sword, tore bandage from flank wound. Blood welling fresh. He flung himself forward, slamming slit side of torso against shard. Daenerys thrust out. Blood splashed onto blue runes. A soundless shockwave blossomed. The shard's hum died. Daenerys choked mid-blast. Horn crumbling. Frost shell shattered, shards drifting like glass petals. He staggered, clutching ears as though silence knifed deeper than sound. Dragon steadied. Drogon roared triumph. Zephyr spat jets of gold fire that consumed warlock shadows hesitating without anchor. Daenerys crumpled, eyes leaking blue fluid. Daenerys approached, breathing hard. It ends. He rasped. Cycles. Never end. She knelt, pressed palm to his brow. Then we break them, again and again. She whispered, Valyrian word of mercy, and closed his eyes. Unsullied cheers erupted as fog thinned, sunlight returning. Astronomers on cliffs hailed tale of eclipse clearing sun's face. Waves lapped, carrying charred debris away. Dragons perched on ramparts, wings outspread, basking. Jon leaned on Longclaw, blood seeping but breath steady. Daenerys rushed, caught him before knees buckled. Hold, she whispered, pressing cloth to wound. You live. He smiled wan. Flatter you to say same. Tormund bellowed laughter, flinging seawater onto coals to make steam ghosts vanish. Arya limped over. Smudged, but grinning. Not bad for a wolf and dragon team. Tyrion appeared, soot-streaked. Note to self. Horns very bad. He eyed broken mouthpiece fragments, now gray and lifeless. We scatter these to corners of earth or melt into chamber pots. Davos clasped Pod's shoulder. And we keep watch. Peace's crop needs tending. Bran wheeled across sand, eyes warm for once. The echoes quiet. He gazed skyward at circling dragons. Balance restored. For now. Weeks later, on a ship sailing north toward White Harbor, Samwell sat beneath canvas awning drafting new pages for the Book of Brothers and Sisters. A living record of deeds beyond conquest. He wrote of a queen who chose flame to save rather than to rule, and of a king who bled to silence a song that could enslave. On deck, Davos taught Marines knots. Tormund told stories about giants riding mammoths. Tyrion argued with Arya about the merits of lemon cakes over honeyed ribs. Jon woke from doze, found Daenerys gazing horizon where water met sky. He joined her, fingers interlacing. Where next? He asked. Where dragons need not burn, yet sky needs guarding. She answered. She glanced back toward hatch where Zephyr slept curled in rigging, Drogon gliding lazy above masts. We teach them to protect, not destroy. Jon nodded. And we teach Realm to do same. Far astern, waves closed over final horn shards, sealed within lead casks, cast into the trench of night by iron-born deckhands. Sun sparkled on surface. Nothing marked where they fell. But men and women carried lessons etched deeper than magic. Horns shattered. Thrones broken. Peace, never given, always forged. And somewhere in the wide world, beyond maps inked to their edges, new stories stirred, waiting for dawn. Yet for now, beneath a quiet sky, and the gentle beat of dragon wings, the realm breathed free.